Okay, good morning. It's 10 o'clock and welcome to the April Fool's Day Executive of Somerset Council. I'm sure there will be no shenanigans. I believe we've got a microphone, loudspeaker on somewhere. Is he able to sort that? And Mr. Edge, we can all see you larger than life in the room. I wonder whether you could pop your camera off for us, please. Excellent, very much. So welcome to our executive meeting, and I'll just go through our usual preamble, that it's only the executive lead members present in the room that are taking the decisions at the meeting. Others here are here to provide advice. There are no planned fire drills today, and in the event of a fire alarm, please follow the fire exit signs and congregate in the car park. If anyone present might need assistance in exiting the building, please let the Democratic Services team know. The agenda and papers have been published on the council website in advance of the meeting, and while the council recognises the importance of striking a balance between providing opportunities for the lawful expression of views, any unacceptable behaviours or actions may lead to our meetings being adjourned if they cause disruption. The council will be making a recording of the meeting, and this will be published in due course. We are using a hybrid format for this meeting, so the lead members and key officers are physically present here in the Luttrell Room in County Hall in Taunton. Other elected members and officers may physically or remotely join the meeting to speak on specific agenda items or to observe, and the meeting is being broadcast, and therefore members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely. If you are logged on online, please only use the chat function for the purposes of this meeting. If you wish to speak, please use the hands up function and say your name before speaking. Otherwise, can all microphones and cameras please be turned off? And just wanted to highlight that it's Mel Locke's last meeting here with us at Somerset Council, and to thank her so much for her many years of service to Somerset residents and to this council, and we do wish you all the best with the next phase of life and your career, and thank you so much for all that you have done for us. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Everyone's shaking their heads at me, so there aren't any. So that's all good. And then minutes for previous meeting. Minutes of the previous meeting, which was on the 25th of February and the 11th of March. We've got two sets to check. So 25th of February first, any comments or corrections from members of the executive? Not seen. We've got a proposal for that one. Seconder. That's proposed. Councillor Lyston, seconded Councillor Shearer. I'm assuming no comments from any other members. Not seeing anybody indicating. Or those in favour of accepting those minutes. Those against. That is clearly carried. And the 11th of March, similarly. Any comments or questions first? For any members of the executive, any other members? Not seeing anybody. Proposed again, Councillor Lyston, seconded Councillor Shearer. Those in favour, those against, those minutes are clearly on my desk. I will find them later. Don't let me leave without signing them. Are there any declarations of interest? Agenda item 3. Not seeing any other than those regarding membership of city, town and parish councils, which moves us swiftly on to public question time. Agenda item 4. I have used my discretion to go above the 6 members of the public to speak on this occasion, and will continue to do so where it allows us to have democratic accountability and participation, but that is at my discretion, so that we do not extend our meetings beyond the point that it is reasonable to do so. So my first public speaker is Mr. Nick Hall. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Chair. So good morning. My name is Nick Hall, and I'm speaking as a trustee of Glastonbury Trainlink. As I hope you all know, Glastonbury Trainlink Trust has been set up to promote a direct and frequent bus service between Glastonbury and Castle Carey's train station via Pilton. We are encouraged by the Executive's recent commitment to a trial bus service to and from Castle Carey's train station. And it goes without saying that we believe that this trial should be from Glastonbury, arguably Somerset's most important tourist destination. Over the past 4 years, evidence has been collected on the favoured route, anticipated demand, and acceptable journey time. And this work has culminated in a recent survey to which over 1,050 people have responded. The service needs to be direct, regular, well-timed for popular train services and running from early morning until late evening, 7 days a week. Among the other interesting aspects of this research is the identification of the additional economic and social benefits to a whole range of people who live and work in the settlements along the route. People are talking about going from one settlement to another, so it's not necessarily just the route from Glastonbury to Castle Carey station. A summary of this data, together with further details of the scheme, are available on our website, which is www.glastonburytrainlink.org. Our understanding is that the train operator, GWR, is very keen to see this pilot launched, and relationships have been established with them to help ensure a strong interface at Castle Carey station. You can imagine bus stops, linking with trains, timetabling, that sort of thing. So clearly this bus service will reduce car usage as well, supporting Somerset's environmental objectives. And we're also very currently, it would mitigate the impact of the Iranian war and obviously the impact from higher fuel prices. Moreover, the proposal demonstrates community engagement and collaborative funding in line with the climate and ecological emergency vision, which you have on your agenda today. So we as a trust have already raised funds towards the scheme. So we encourage the council to be bold and make a timely decision so that our pilot can be started ahead of this year's peak tourist season. And we believe that our pilot could be implemented in a matter of weeks. Somerset Council's transport team have been very supportive in helping to shape our proposals over the last 18 months. And to maintain this momentum and grasp this fantastic opportunity, the Trust requests a meeting with Somerset Council to create a joint implementation plan. So we'd like to know when we can meet and who we can meet with.
Thank you,
Chair.
Thank you. Oh, apologies. Have you finished? Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hall, for your question, and call on Councillor Richard Wilkins to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. And we are currently working through possible options and checking the railway timetables, which are due to change in May, to ensure that connections are achievable and sensible. Once we have completed this work, we will be in contact with Glastonbury Trainlink yourselves to share the proposals.
Okay, so do we have any indication of how soon we might get a date on that, please, Councillor Wilkins?
Imminently, I would suggest. We are working through. We've only just looking at the new timetable from GWR and other trains in Castle Carey, so that we can just ensure that whatever we recommend fits in with the trains. There's no point us running a bus service that doesn't meet trains. So
absolutely,
that's the point of the link, and I'm sure that's not lost with everybody here. I would also say that as a resident of Glastonbury and Somerton, I couldn't possibly suggest what is the most important tourist destination in Somerset.
No, I wasn't. It's definitely arguably the most important, and I think that's an interesting argument that we could have but let's not do it today. It does also strike me that the connection through to Clark's Village at Street might also be an interesting development as well. And I wonder whether approaching Clark's Village might well get this over the line, if that's not a pun. Okay, thank you very much for your question, Mr. Hall. Our next question is from Carol Edmonds, who I believe is online. Good morning, Carol. You've got 3 minutes.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. It's regarding on-street parking on Salmon Parade in Bridgwater. Councillor Richard Wilkins gave a statement to the council on the 4th of March 2026 regarding Somerset Council's actions concerning the on-street parking on Salmon Parade, in which he said that 1, the on-street parking would be reinstated at the earliest opportunity, and 2, the consultants were designing parking spaces at pace and their draft proposals were being reviewed ahead of legal process for implementation. He knows the wider issues of the Celebration Mile are of great concern to Bridgwater residents, prompting an outcry on social media expressed in a petition with over 5,800 signatures and brought to the council in December 2025. That was over 3 months ago. It is an urgent matter. Councillor Mike Rigby attended a meeting of the Town Development Forum of Bridgwater Town Council on the 19th of January, at which he told the forum he did not know why the parking spaces had been removed and that they could be brought back at an early stage. Bridgwater Town Council unanimously voted to request that Somerset Council restore the on-street parking on Salmon Parade as soon as possible in December 2025 also. This urgent matter has not been included on the agenda for this meeting. Can Councillor Wilkins please give an update? And can he confirm a timetable for the reinstatement of the parking? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe that on our agenda here. I think that would lie with an officer decision, not on a legal decision. Councillor, do you want to respond?
My team are working hard to get the parking spaces implemented as soon as possible. We are finishing the details and we will issue a firm date shortly. However, I will say that we will aim to get this implemented within the next 8 weeks. We have drawings that we can now share with local members, and the work will be ordered on a 28-day turnaround. The experimental traffic order can be implemented very quickly.
Okay, so I'm hearing 8 weeks at this at the final deadline, but could be quicker than that. Is that correct?
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Oops, I believe my microphone was off with that one. So our next question is for Mr. Phil Edge, who is the chair of the Langport Transport Group.
Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Phil. You have 3 minutes.
Thanking you. Langport Transport Group.
I'm sorry, Mr. Edge, but you are. We cannot hear you. It does. Is he muted? You are not muted, and we can't hear you. That is interesting. Do you have a microphone or anything plugged in?
It should work automatically, so I'll just check my mic.
No, we aren't. We actually, apparently, there is a very faint noise coming from you. So it may be a setting that you need to change at your end, or we will try and amplify you at our end. You want to try speaking now?
Good morning. Can everybody hear me now?
Okay, so apparently, well, it's bizarre because you can be heard online apparently, but not. Is there any way you can get the microphone closer to you?
I'm trying that now.
Yeah, we can hear you from that. So if you'd like to start now, and if everyone stays absolutely silent, we'll be able to pick you up. Thank you.
Apologies for the lack of technology. Langport Transport Group supports reconnecting 53,000 residents to rail. Serving the towns of Somerton and Langport along with the surrounding area, a new station will stand on the existing Great Western Main Line between London and Penzance. Somerset County Council, as was our strategic statutory partner in 2021 in bidding successfully for £50,000 of DFT reopening your railway funding, acting as the responsible budget holder. A business case was commissioned through the Council's framework agreement with the consultant WSP. Disadvantaged communities across the scheme's catchment, almost 10% of Somerset's population, would benefit. For example, Street Northwest, Glastonbury Central and Curry Rival North. During 2023-24, Somerset's total station passengers reached 3.348 million, increasing by 170,000 from 2022 to 23 and up nearly 0.6 million from 2013-14. The business case forecast 230,000 journeys annually from a Somerton station, of which 2/3 would be new to rail. Journey times of 11 minutes to Taunton compare with 50 minutes or more by road. Environmental, economic, educational and social benefits are myriad with the rail network as a gateway to opportunity for the next generation. Bearing in mind the above, and given Somerset Council's stated priorities on connectivity and sustainable growth, why has the Somerton and Langport station reopening, which is backed by a positive business case and strong local and parliamentary support, been omitted from the delivery plan? Will the executive now commit to formally including and supporting this project? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Phil. It was very quiet, but I think we heard it and we've got it all in writing. So thank you so much for your question. And Councillor Richard Wilkins to respond.
Hi, Phil, and good to see you again. As you know, we've been very supportive, and it's worth noting that Sarah Dyke MP has been extremely supportive of this project many times in Parliament. But however, the council is supportive. Financial contribution, but needless to say that we continue to lobby hard to get them to look at this business case because it's been sat on the DFT's shelf far too long.
Okay. Mr. Edge, you appear to have got your hand up. We don't normally take comebacks, I'm afraid. So if you do wish to have any further amplification, then please do get in touch with Councillor Wilkins, who will, I'm sure, be in regular communication with you. Okay. And the next question is David Northey. And I believe Dave, yes, I thought I saw you earlier. Hello, David.
Good morning. My name's David Northey. I'm the co-chair of the Somerset Bus Partnership, and thank you for inviting me along on this sort of extra set of questions. So I wanted to start to thank the Executive Committee following on from the reply received last month regarding the GreenWaves technology, which is hoped to help sort of bus services travel quicker through congestion. I recognise that GreenWaves can provide some benefit at traffic signals by reducing the stop-start delay and offering limited priorities at junctions. However, it's acknowledged that it only operates when the bus is within close proximity to a signal and delivers relatively small incremental time savings. The evidence suggests that GreenWaves typically saves only between 1 to 10 seconds per junction, which is about 4 seconds typically on any particular journey. This may help in isolated signal areas, especially in places like Eastreach, where we've got a whole range of traffic signals, but not enough to address the scale of the delay that we see on the Wellington Road here in Taunton. On that basis, it is clear that GreenWaves is not designed to address and can resolve extended congestion along this corridor. It's also important to note that funding was provided to Somerset through the 2022 Bus Service Improvement Plan, specifically to deliver bus priority measures, including bus lanes, to improve journey times and reliability. No more is this most evident than on the Wellington Road, as I say, here in Taunton, one of the most congested parts of the bus network, and has a material impact on bus services radiating in and out of Taunton. Buses travelling from Wellington and from the new Park and Bus site at Orchard Grove are experiencing up to 20 minutes delay in peak periods. This is over 2 kilometres of queuing traffic from Stone Gallows before reaching the first signalised junction at Mountway Road by Musgrave Park Hospital, meaning buses are already significantly delayed before any signal priority can take effect. So we have to be clear about this. On this corridor, like the Wellington Road, it is obvious that GreenWaves will not deliver meaningful improvements to journey times or reliability. At its best, it may offer a few seconds at individual junctions, but it does not tackle the root cause, which is sustained congestion. This also creates a wider concern, which we're actively encouraging people to use the Park and Bus at Orchard Grove, yet the corridor these buses rely on is not being given the level of priority needed to make them the most reliable or attractive. And critically, this directly undermines our wider, and that's not us, but also Somerset as well, its climate ambitions. If buses remain delayed and unreliable, people will not shift from private cars. So without this modal shift, we cannot reduce the congestion or emissions in any meaningful way. Delaying climate objectives depends on making public transport faster, more reliable and more attractive than the car, not subject to the same delays. Wellington Road has already been identified as a required bus priority infrastructure, and that points to clearly towards measures such as bus lanes or other forms of continuous priority. So my key question is, given that GreenWaves cannot address the scale of delay on the Wellington Road, and that the BSIP funding was provided for bus priority infrastructure, what alternative measures is the executive now prepared to bring forward for this corridor, and when will we see a clear commitment with funding and a delivery timescale to implement them?
Thank you, David. You
Okay.
have gone clearly over your 3
Okay,
minutes.
sorry, my apologies.
I've given you a country mile 3 minutes.
Thank
Thank you so much for your question. And Councillor Wilkins, would you like to respond?
Thank you, David. Actually, I'm not sure where you've got your figures from, because prior to taking the decision to implement the GreenWaves solution along Wellington Road, the council carried out an analysis to compare the likely bus journeys times improvements for a traditional bus priority scheme and the GreenWaves technology. The work demonstrates that whilst traditional bus lanes could provide some journey time savers to bus users, the benefits from GreenWaves technology was significantly greater. And I think your example of the length of the wait really demonstrates the reasons why that is the case. However, the narrow sections of road around Musgrove Hospital entrance and the number of junctions and side turnings prevent the provision of a continuous bus lane. Providing an intermittent bus lane would also restrict capacity for all other traffic, which would exacerbate the situation there, and would likely increase queuing and prevent buses from getting onto the section of bus lane. The council therefore has no current plans or funding to deliver any traditional bus priority measures along Wellington Road.
Okay, thank you for the question and thank you for the response, Councillor Wilkins. I would also just like to highlight the importance, therefore, of delivering the Wellington Station project, and really pleased to see the commitment that both this council and Gideon Amos as the local MP has given towards that project as well. Moving on, we've got Rosa Cal next. Hello, Rosa.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm asking the executive support to improve access to Musgrove Park Hospital for the residents of West Somerset and the wider rural catchment area of public transport, local commuter networks, and survey of hospital patients. They all raise concerns regarding access to the Musgrove Park without a car. There is a simple deliverable option which would deliver immediate improvements and enable the West Somerset residents, particularly on the route 28 and 25, to call at the parade stop adjacent to Market House, and passengers would be able to then straightforward interchange to the Park and Ride and access Musgrove Park that way. This represents a low-cost impact solution and would benefit many patients and staff and visitors to the hospital alike, removing a key barrier accessing that healthcare site. I understand that the current barrier relates to updating onboard systems for next stop announcements and table time data. This is an operational issue rather than physical constraint and should be capable of being resolved quickly. While the future transport hub will improve integration, it will not be operational until later this year. In the meantime, passengers need practical improvements now. I would therefore ask, on behalf of the West Somerset Hospital patients, many of whom came and talked to us at Minehead yesterday, the executive would support for this stop at bus stop J would greatly improve the situation, and please, it can easily be implemented by the end of April with your support and talking to the appropriate operator. Thank you very much, and hopefully we get your support.
Thank you very much, Rosa. And Councillor Richard Wilkins, it's your turn in the spotlight yet again.
Thank you, Rosa, and good to see you again. And I think we all appreciate the work that you do, and David, and all of the Somerset Bus Partnership and the bus user groups across Somerset. They play an incredible part in making our bus services what we want them to be. So we do support the addition of this bus stop on routes 25 and 28. We understand from the operator that there are some technical issues they wish to address before this can be implemented, but we are working with the operator to try and expedite this change as soon as possible. I'm taking a personal interest in us moving this forward as quickly as possible.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Wilkins, and thank you for the question, Rosa. And Nicola Perold. Nicola, you're online. Hello,
Yes,
Nicola.
yes, I am. Hello, good morning. So my question is, the county's horse riders often feel that they are overlooked. The council's active travel plans tend to focus on cyclists and walkers, with the equine community at best or a late afterthought. A particular concern that they have raised with me is the car park at the top of Deer Leap near Priddy. The bridleway runs across the car park and is often completely blocked by parked cars. There is no simple and safe way to leave the bridleway at this point. Although blocking a bridleway is an offence, it would be unfair to blame our car owners for doing this so here. There is no indication, bar one circular sign about 5 centimetres in diameter on a post some distance back from the car park, that there is a bridleway, let alone any reason for anyone to think it runs across the car park. So I would like to ask the question, what steps are the council able to improve signage so that visitors are aware of the existence of a bridleway and the importance of not blocking it with a parked car? And would the council be willing to physically restrict parking on the bridleway by, for example, placing posts in order to prevent it? After that, what actions, once signage is in place, will it be that they will take to enforce parking restrictions and support the equine community?
Thank you very much for your question, Nicola. And Councillor Richard Wilkins to respond, please.
Yes, and thank you, Nicola. As we approach the adoption of the latest local transport plan, I can confirm that horse riders are included in what the council defines as active travel, and we will always seek for route improvement and development to be inclusive where possible. In relation to the car park at Deer Lap, I am actually really sorry to hear about the difficulties being encountered. The site is currently managed by the Mendip Hills National Landscape Team, and they have confirmed that they already have some signage and posts in stock, which they intend to install very soon. Their installation will hopefully help to prevent any future problems with the bridleway being blocked by parked cars. The team's rangers and volunteers are on site on a regular basis and will monitor the effectiveness of the new measures once they've been installed.
Thank you, Richard. Do we have any indication of the timescales from the Mendip Hills?
I don't have any indication on that yet.
It might be helpful if we can just follow that up.
Yeah.
With the written answer, please. Okay, and we now move on to Lullington and Laverton Parish meeting, and I believe Councillor Dawn Denton is going to read out their question.
Thank you very much. And also just like to start with wishing the council a happy 137th birthday, because today on the 1st of April in 1889, the council met for the very first time. And two members of the Luttrell family were elected on that day, and we're sitting in the Luttrell room. So
what finer way, if we'd known earlier, we'd
get a cake.
We'd have baked a cake.
Okay.
And I'm sure Councillor Hobhouse will tell me how many members of the Hobhouse family were present on that.
That's okay. The Hobhouse family has South African connections too, so I'm thrilled with that.
Please don't start, Henry, on those.
No, we'll start on the rugby, and then we'll move on from that, or the cricket. Our large rural county. Thank you very much for allowing me to ask this question as well, because I know that it was. I have another question, but this is on behalf of the parish. Our large rural county is struggling daily with HGVs being sent down inappropriate lanes. And these drivers are unfamiliar with the area and thus rely on Google Maps. And every day in Lullington and Laverton, large lorries are destroying ancient walls, properties and the bridge, which cost Somerset Council to repair while trying to get to the local factory, when there are large suitable roads they could be using instead. It's distressing for the drivers, who have to often reverse for miles to get out, and for the residents, who are simply trying to protect their properties, their villages and their sanity. The drivers tell the communities they're frustrated because there are no signs at the entrance to the lanes and to advise them of the route. And I supported Berkeley, the neighbouring parish, to get their signs in. It took 4 years to do that. But the parish, the Lullington and Laverton parish meeting would like to ask, is there a way to speed up the installation of no HGV signs, even when the parish has said they would pay for the signs themselves? Sorry, there should have been a question mark there. As a teacher, I should have put a red pen through that. The community has managed to get TomTom to update their systems to remove these lanes and advise of their unsuitability for larger vehicles. But the previous government was pushing for legislation to make all HGVs use industry-specific satellite navigation systems to direct them onto roads that are appropriate for their lorry size and weight. But this is stalled. Could the lead member please push for legislation to ensure these HGVs do not use Google Maps? And the community, Councillor Adam Boyden and I have tried to contact Google Maps to no avail. And could the lead member please use his powerful letterhead to contact Google to ask them to alert drivers of the limitations of the lanes around Laverton and Lullington. And I'm sure there are many other lanes across the county that would find this valuable too. So just to keep you on your toes, it sounds like it's your meeting today.
And it's delighted to know that you have a powerful letterhead. We'll learn more about that later, I'm sure.
Thank you, Dawn, and obviously thank the parish council as well. So the use of satellite navigation systems by HGV drivers has led to a notable increase in problems across our rural county. Officers are currently engaging with local councillors and communities to address concerns regarding the use of unsuitable routes to access to the local factory referred to. Despite the installation of positive lorry route signage last year, reports continue to be received. We have contacted the company directly through to outline the ongoing issues and to reinforce their responsibilities in managing vehicle routing. Officers have also submitted feedback to Google Maps, though the online reporting process and are awaiting a response. Although advisory unsuitable for HGV signs has been effective in other locations, the circumstances in this case means that the authority is likely to need to consider implementing a formal restriction. And just on a note, I am an ex-HGV driver, so I fully understand the issues concerned, and I think it's criminal that Google Maps doesn't have a lorry setting on their normal mappage that anybody can use. Whilst most lorry drivers are very sensible and try to use, like you say, the official lorry routes, there's no reason why this can't be a setting on Google Maps, in my opinion. That's
yeah, have similar issues with a couple of factories in my patch or that require HGV access, and we have had some unsuitable for HGV signs. They're only advisory, but it has helped reduce inappropriate use of those lanes. So if they can be installed where suitable, it would be fab. And it is frustrating for parish councils when it takes a while for the service to respond to those requests. So I'm sure we'll want to make that easier. Okay, thank you very much. Nigel Ian, are you online, Nigel?
Yes,
there he is. Hello, Nigel.
I will. Hope you can hear me all right.
You are very faint. If you can get any closer to your microphone, and we will try and turn you up in the room.
Okay.
And if everyone could be punctiliously silent, we'll get there. Thank you very much, Nigel.
Okay, this relates to item 12 on your agenda today. And as a long-standing TU rep, I agree with the policy about abusive behaviour. And it's worth noting in passing, actually, that I started work in local government in Revs and Bens, poll tax rebates and housing benefits when the poll tax was in. So that was quite a big eye-opener. And that was about the same time I became a rep. Anyway, moving on. I mean, that notwithstanding, where a citizen has not received a full and final answer, members felt that these categories should be clearly distinguished, as persistence often arises where residents believe significant questions remain unanswered and therefore should not be immediately categorised as unreasonable. And that's from the scrutiny recommendation to item 12 today. I do believe the scrutiny recommendations are appropriate, including democratic oversight, to pursue matters to resolution in non-adversarial ways, in open, transparent and accountable manner, and I hope the executive will consider similarly. And it's just worth noting you have things like officer appeals committees, so I just think that's harmonising it all. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigel. Thanks for being brief. I believe Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts is going to respond.
Thank you, Nigel, for your question. Your comments are certainly noted, and it is accepted that the policy should only be used in cases of persistence where it can be demonstrated that reasonable efforts have been made to establish and answer outstanding questions. Additionally, customer rights to seek information from the council through statutory processes such as FOIs or EIRs are unaffected by this policy, and in all cases we seek to ensure that at least one channel of communication remains open to the customer. Officers have included a recommendation of increased monthly and annual reporting to improve member oversight of application of the policy.
Thank you, Federica, for the answer, and Nigel for the question. And moving on to Mr. David All. Hello, David. Oh, Brenda's going first. Okay, over to Mrs. Brenda All.
Before I start, could I just say that I'm also referring to the item 12, the unreasonable customer policy. In 2013, when we lived in Taunton South, a controversial planning decision was made to develop in our local Vivery Green Wedge, set aside from development. 400 people attended the planning meeting, which narrowly voted for the development on the benefits outweighs harms test. One of the key benefits cited was land for a new primary school, as our ward didn't have one. Instead of walking to a local school, parents drove down narrow lanes to the village schools in Thirlbare and Trull. In April 2024, when most of the 315 homes had been built on the Green Wedge, local media reported that the land for a primary school had been sold by the council back to the developer, with a care home proposed instead. There had been no prior consultation. The local ward school funding was redirected by County Hall for a distant primary school at Orchard Grove on the other side of Taunton. My husband followed up with the ward councillors and the planning chair, as the planning application was incomplete. The key question of where will the local children now go to school wasn't addressed. The planning portal wasn't corrected. Both planning and education services were ignoring David's reasonable inquiries. The planning chair advised him to escalate to the planning portfolio holder. A polite follow-up in early September 2024 with the planning portfolio holder was deemed to be an unreasonable customer contact, triggering a full red card sanction. This despite the continued absence of key education planning information. Contact restrictions are typically aimed at protecting officers from unreasonable customer behaviours so that they can get on with their work. They should not be used to prevent a citizen from contacting ward councillors, planning chairs or a portfolio holder where appropriate. Could the customer persistence, now redesignated unreasonable, be used to cover ongoing issues by not answering reasonable information inquiries? Could council services paid for through our council tax be protected from systemic failings by silencing the tax-paying inquirer? Is there a danger that a local citizen could have their democratic rights curtailed when management corrective action is what is really called for? This reflects the wider concern identified by scrutiny. Months later, David wanted to go to the Ombudsman, having gathered a solid evidence base. Instead, we chose to resolve this locally in good faith. Last week, scrutiny listened to our uncontested case and made their constructive recommendations for an independent appeal. I found tears in my eyes to think that this awful 2-year episode might finally lie behind us. I ask the executive to respect the deliberations of a scrutiny committee which has a majority of Lib Dem colleagues and incorporate their wise recommendations in full.
Thank you, Mrs. Orr. I
Thank you.
did allow you significantly over the 3 minutes, just so that you're aware. Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts to respond.
Thank you, Mrs. Orr, for your question today and for your comments at scrutiny. Statutory rights to request information from the council under the FOI and EIR legislations are unaffected by any application of the unreasonable customer behaviour policy. Therefore, the council cannot and will not refuse to consider such requests for information and supply it to the requester and the public at large, unless there is a valid exemption or exception under the legislations. Any application of exemptions or exceptions or failure to disclose or respond can be challenged through the Information Commissioner's Office, who act as independent regulators in such matter. In response to your other queries, we will be discussing that later on in the agenda.
Thank you. And lastly, Mr. David Orr.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is also item 12, unreasonable customer policy. Regrettably and possibly time-bound, due to scrutiny only being 1 week before executive, there is a material misstatement in the covering submission by the officers which has not been amended. They state the customer suggested that decisions regarding restricting contact be made formally by elected officers rather than members. I had suggested that only the appeal stage involved a small panel of independent impartial councillors, possibly the Standards Committee. The 3 stages of the unreasonable customer policy, pre-warning yellow and red cards, lie entirely within the officer's discretion. This is why the police investigate the accused, but a separate Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, assesses whether to charge and take the accused to court. The Customer Experience Manager stated there are 12 to 20 unreasonable customer designations per year. Can she say now how many go to appeal? Is my appeal the only one since vesting day? This council has a poor record when appeals are made to the Ombudsman, as you only win a small proportion of referrals. If the unreasonable customer appeal stage, which the Scrutiny Committee have recommended, involved a small panel of independent and impartial councillors, then 2 things should arise. A reduction in potential Ombudsman appeals, as the customer would feel their side of the case had been heard and the appeal was judged impartially, not something I felt. Right now, the officers of the police, the CPS and the final arbiter. If a case gets referred to the Ombudsman, then the council will be seen to have acted impartially and fully exercised their duty of care. You should win more referrals. These changes would affect only a small number of cases each year, maybe only 1 or 2, but would significantly improve fairness, transparency and public confidence. So it's not onerous, and this is the most important recommendation I felt the scrutiny made. When I look back at this 2-year episode, I'm struck by the simple fact that had the inquiries been dealt with and common sense exercised, a great deal of time and money would have been saved. If in the summer of 2024, the council had listened to the mediating executive councillor, then all of this wasted time and money could have been saved. If a listening council doesn't listen, then avoidable conflict may arise. Council behaviour should be aligned to liberal democratic values. However, to the persistent customer, could it sometimes feel that overloaded officers, and I am sympathetic, stressed with complex and unresolved community issues, may in exasperation want the persistent customer to go away, switched off, whatever? Does there need to be a better escalation route for overloaded officers with additional management support? We are impressed with Scrutiny's respectful attention to this unreasonable customer policy matter and their positive contributions. This shouldn't become a contest to determine who is in charge. The aim here surely should be to address shortcomings in an inherited county council policy and use wisdom and experience to improve the policy. I respectfully ask this executive committee to endorse the scrutiny common sense recommendations in full, in particular an independent appeal with elected members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orr. And once again, you did go over the 3 minutes and I did allow you a little bit of extra time. Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Orr, again for your question and for the time that you took at scrutiny as well. It is noted and accepted that the request was for member involvement at appeal stage and not within the original decision-making process. Whilst within the current process, decisions and appeals are made by officers without member involvement, there are multiple senior officers involved in the consideration of each case, providing opportunity for challenge. Whilst comments regarding the manner in which police investigations are noted, we would not see the situation as equal. The use of the policy is to manage operational issues and not criminal actions. Any potential criminal actions highlighted under this policy would be referred to the police for investigation. There has only been one appeal under the unreasonable customer behaviour policy since vesting and none prior to that. It is accepted that increased oversight by members of the application of this policy would provide a further level of scrutiny, and a recommendation for increased annual and monthly reporting has been made.
Okay, and we will discuss this matter further under agenda item 12. So we move on. Thank you to all members of the public for their questions, and thank you for the forbearance. I have given extra time and allowed extra speakers today using chair's discretion. It's so important to us to be able to be the listening council. So agenda item 5 is questions from councillors to the executive, and Councillor Bob Filmer is first.
Thank you, Leader. At the end of last year, the Labour government said it would allow local councils to introduce a holiday tax locally. The proposals, which would see local councils charging an added fee of up to 5% of the cost of overnight stays in hotels and holiday lets, would amount to millions of pounds in added taxes for holidaymakers and thousands of job losses across the hospitality industry by 2030. Recently, some councils have chosen to take up this offer. Somerset has a large number of businesses associated with tourism, and many local people are employed in the leisure and tourism industries. My own local area of the Brent Division contains not only the holiday businesses in Barrow and Breen, but also across the Ryder area, with many businesses catering for visitors who visit our beautiful county. Many of these businesses, and those across Somerset, are family run and are already having to deal with increased government taxes, increased costs to employ staff, and increased overheads such as fuel. They cannot afford any further burdens imposed locally. So my question is, can the executive please reassure me and the many local businesses in Somerset that the Somerset Council will not introduce a holiday tax? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. And the answer is coming from Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts.
Thank you, Bob, for your question. I share your views about the importance of the visitor economy to Somerset, and indeed tourism is identified as one of the county's bedrock sectors in the Somerset Economic Prosperity Strategy adopted by this executive on behalf of Somerset Council last summer. In terms of the holiday tax matter that you've raised, the position is that at present there is no basis on which English local authorities such as this council can or could in the future set a tax on visitors. The government concluded in February 26 a consultation about the proposals for mayoral strategic authorities having the discretionary power to raise an overnight visitor levy in the future. And as part of this consultation also sought views on whether this power might in the future be extended to the Foundation's strategic authorities. As you will be aware, Somerset is not included in the map of existing or proposed mayoral strategic authorities, and we await clarity from government about whether the Wessex Partnership of Local Authorities will be considered as a future area for the establishment of a Foundation strategic authority. In summary, Somerset Council does not have the power to set a tax on visitors, and any move towards an overnight visitor levy are subject to the government's decisions post that recent consultation, the government's approach to regional devolution, and the decisions of any future strategic authority covering our area.
Okay, thank you very much for the question and for the answer. We know that this is an interesting area, and it's as we go through the devolution journey with our partners in other areas, which also similarly have a complex tourism market, and we're very aware that it's not a straightforward one, particularly if you contrast perhaps. Yeah, I know in your patch you've got some holiday camps. We also have the delights of Glastonbury Festival. We have hunting and shooting lodges up on Exmoor. It is a very diverse tourism market, and a cookie cutter model is perhaps not appropriate to that response. Anyway, we will enjoy that one at another time. Councillor Frances Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. just as Councillor Denton said, mentioned the birthday today, I'm probably the only person who's here who is old enough, or perhaps admits to being old enough, to have been present at the 100th birthday party, which the council held in the gardens of the then Fire Authority headquarters, in the gardens at Heskecombe. Things have moved on a bit, but it's quite nice to remember occasions like that. Now, the question. I welcomed the recent assessment on the timeliness of education and health and care plans and needs that went to corporate resources scrutiny with proposals to bring down the backlog of assessments and EHCPs. When will a decision be made on any additional resources to reduce the backlog, and at which committee, that is internal boards and member committees, will the decision need to be made at, and I wonder how many times? In the written answer that I know Councillor Shearer will send, please can she supply members with a flowchart and timetable leading to the date when recruitment can begin?
Councillor Shearer.
Thank you so much, Francis. It's a question close to all of our hearts. I can say that the Directorate, we intend to propose a key decision to the Executive in June 2026. The timescale will enable the key decision papers to be drafted and relevant corporate directors to complete and authorise the authorisation process in line with our democratic process. No problem with giving you a flow chart about that one at all. That'd be a helpful thing to do. I think we need more flow charts, actually, if we can do that. And I think also to understand when the decision is made, what the likelihood then is around the recruitment process and so on. So thank you so much for the question. And just to reassure, I know my corporate colleagues and executive and officers are as behind this need as we are. Thank you.
I'm very grateful for the answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question and for the response. And we do know this is an issue that will be of particular interest to many of our families and, of course, to this council, because it's going to be a running issue for a number of years for local authorities, both for the educational needs of those children, which are paramount, and also the financial stability of local government. It's a big issue, that one. So we move on to Councillor Diogo Rodriguez.
Thanks, Chairman. My question is around consultancy spend. I hear too often residents complaining about the amount of money that we spend on consultants. So we know that the council has agreed to spend up to £20 million on consultants to advise you on how to save money, over 200,000 on consultants to advise you on how much to charge residents to park their cars in car parks. And we know that we're using consultants to advise on road layouts, on Bridgewater specifically, Celebration Mile. So what we, and I think the public, want to know is how much of the council's total spend is on external consultants or advisory support since April 2023, including any committed or contracted expenditure, such as that 20 million, whether spent or yet to be spent. And could you also provide a breakdown of the directorate or service area? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just in your preamble, just a couple of phrases I don't particularly recognise. Mr. Jones, 20 million on consultants to advise on saving money?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Chair. I can presume that the question relates to the assignment that was made by Executive for appointment of Newton. So Newton Consulting, as you know, have been brought on board to assist us in the development of our wider transformation programme and support the delivery, particularly of a number of different business cases that, again, were subsequently approved by Executive on the 25th of February, I believe. The key to this is not just around looking at how we can address the budget gap, but more importantly, looking at improving outcomes for residents, as we did through the My Life, My Future programme. So the characterisation in terms of the programme has been well set. It is absolutely about making sure we can balance the books, but more importantly, it's also regarding improving those outcomes, again, following that trend that we set out as part of the as part of the work in My Life, My Future. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I think we can accept that's a mischaracterisation of that one. £200,000 on consultants on how much to charge to park their cars, consultants to advise on road layout in Bridgewater. Mr. Hall?
Yeah, thank you. So council committed to undertake a consultation exercise in progressing the parking policy changes. And in order for that to be meaningful, we agreed to engage on the individual locations, and officers recommended a detailed review of parking usage. So it goes beyond simply parking charges. Those recommendations were part of the reports brought forward for scrutiny and for executive, and the approval was given to engage specialist consultants on the surveys, analysis and evidence gathering requirements to support that consultation process. So the evidence base goes beyond how much to charge. It identifies current usage in car parks, the surrounding areas, as well as considering the implication of charging and how we might mitigate those implications. Throughout the parking policy discussions, members were supportive of the need to take an evidence-based approach in reaching that decision making. Collectively, though, the overall cost is in excess of £200,000, as is stated, and that equates to just under £1,500 per car park.
Okay, thank you. And the road layout changes in Bridgewater?
Yeah, so we've engaged. I don't have the figure to hand on the cost that we've have for that, but that I believe we've engaged with Stantec once again. So they were part of the road layout proposals for Eastover Salmon Parade area as part of the first consultation and the delivery of the scheme, and we've engaged them again to review that.
So the previous administration at Sedgemoor District Council, when they put forward this proposal, used consultants to put forward that proposal?
Stantec were engaged on the original design, yes.
Okay, so consultants have been used by previous administrations and they continue to be used by this administration. That's a continuity of using exactly the same consultants to carry out, to give us advice on these projects.
Yes, in terms of design. So it goes above consultancy in its true sense. We are engaging specialists on design, but yes, we are using a consistent external provider for that.
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Theobald-Phillips is going to respond to the questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So to sum up, since winning the 2022 elections, this administration has been taking the necessary investment decisions to bring about a financially sustainable council which is able to deliver for the people and communities of Somerset. Working with our strategic partner, we have delivered significant savings via our investment in the My Life, My Future programme, and we are continuing that approach. The budget for this financial year includes savings as a result of further such investment in adults, with proof of concept work in children's and indeed third-party spend to bring our budget into balance whilst delivering the services that the people and communities of Somerset deserve. By the end of this administration, we will have made savings in the region of £135 million since vesting day. Indeed, I hope we will have exceeded that figure. Where it is necessary to bring in external support, we will do so. I'm aware that the Leader of the Opposition opposes the investment we have made in Somerset Council. Without it, I do not believe that we would be on course, as we are, to deliver a balanced budget for 27-28. Indeed, we would be on course for a Section 114 notice and expensive government commissioners, and that appears to be the preferred course of the Leader of the Opposition. It is not our preferred course. In a range of circumstances, using specialist external expertise is the most appropriate and cost-effective way to identify and deliver long-term savings or to carry out short-term pieces of specialist work, particularly when compared with the cost of permanent staffing or unmanaged risk. The Leader of the Opposition has asked for a significant amount of information, much of which is in the public domain. Decisions on expenditure are made via the usual democratic process of this organisation, with key decisions being published. He will also be aware that under the Local Government Transparency Code 2015, all items of expenditure over £500 are published on the Council's website on a quarterly basis and are freely available to peruse at anyone's leisure. I'm asking officers to assist the Leader of the Opposition in interpreting this information and with accessing any further available information that he requires.
Thank you for the response and thank you for the question. Councillor Lisa Trimnell. I can hear you, but it's not working, so they aren't mutually exclusive. Oh. Yeah,
Right, apologies for that. So my question is fairly straightforward. Hopefully you won't need to do too much for it. It regards communications between councillors and the Highways Services team. So highways inquiries, complaints and suggestions account for a large percentage of my day-to-day workload, but the total lack of response is leaving me unable to provide communities the support that they request. I actually inquired last year whether I'd been blacklisted, and I was actually told that that was not the case, but I do hear from other councillors and even clerks that I'm not the only person experiencing this in my area. At the last executive meeting, for example, I approached Councillor Wilkins in person about a pressing problem on a road in Cole near Bruton because the parish council haven't been able to get any action on the issue. I was advised to email him and the highways team, but nobody has replied. I really don't know what to do. So I was thinking about this because we can't just keep asking questions all the time if we don't try and think, well, what could a solution be? And it occurred to me that the member planning has had some really good feedback, the dropping sessions that they do, where people can go and ask questions about issues in their areas. And I wondered if we could do something perhaps similar for highways. At the moment, the automated response for the emails is written correspondence will be replied to within 10 working days, but it's not always possible. But I don't receive any responses to my emails, and others have said the same. I'm sure that you'll say this is due to the workload on the highways teams, and that means that emails are fast becoming a dead end for councillors, leaves us in a difficult position with parishes and residents who've asked us to chase information on their behalf. Now, look, the representation of our communities on all council-related issues is a key aspect of a councillor's role, and if an online highways drop-in could be made available to Somerset Council members, and I understand clerks get some kind of briefing, so if somebody is getting something, then if it was in a similar format to those planning drop-ins, we might be able to resolve our queries far sooner and save everyone's inboxes. I think people would even be prepared to pre-advise what the questions were so that they could get answers. If the council's unable to provide this service, please could they consider recruiting some more staff, certainly in the east area where I am, to help the existing team who are clearly overrun so that we can get some solution to issues that we've faced. Thank you.
Thank you. I do note that your written submission and your verbal submission do differ quite significantly. Can I just remind you of our standing orders? Thank you. Councillor Richard Wilkins.
Thank you, Lucy. It is true that the highway service is under pressure at the moment, dealing with customer reports of safety defects and catching up with issues that have had to take a lesser priority during the recent extreme weather events and major flooding. It's worth noting the events that did take place earlier this year. It is the same teams dealing with the issues on the ground that are responding to our members' queries. However, various improvements have been made in the past year in relation to how we communicate with members and communities. Examples include mapping planned works, schedules, and we have recently begun to issue a summary of what works have taken place in each division, which all members should now be receiving. If you aren't, please let me know, or the service know. And the team does regularly attend highways related meetings of LCNs too. And it is worth passing the information that you receive onto the parish councils in your division when you receive that information at the beginning of the month. The service is also currently working with colleagues in IT and data to improve how customers can interact with us, how we can better keep them updated on their service requests and enable more opportunities to self-serve, all of which should free up officer time to deal with the real issues on the network. I am, of course, interested to understand other engagement models and will ask officers to liaise with the planning colleagues to understand whether their model may have any benefits in highways and what resource implications there might be. I must stress that for officers to be able to follow up on members' queries, it is vital that customer reference numbers from the reported system are quoted. This follow-up contact should be made to the relevant highway area mailbox, not to individuals' email addresses. Using the area mailboxes to follow up means that contact can be better tracked and where necessary reallocated, for example, during staff absence.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Wilkinson. Thank you for the question, Councillor Trimnell. Councillor Susanna Hart next.
Oh, hello, good morning. I don't know whether that's going to make a difference. A council can declare a state of emergency when an event or situation threatens serious damage to human welfare and the response requires special powers or resources beyond the day-to-day capabilities of the council. The declaration of a state of emergency is generally used to trigger emergency plans, access contingency funding and bypass standard bureaucratic process to protect citizens. When the scale of an incident means the council is unable to take necessary action without changing the deployment of resources or acquiring additional resources in order to suspend standard procurement and spend money without the usual bureaucratic delays and to trigger liaison with central government signalling that the situation requires national assistance. So my question, as you will be aware, is this. Following on for community scrutiny last week, both Somerset councillors for Glastonbury would like to ask this executive to vote on declaring a state of emergency in relation to the dire need for temporary and meanwhile traveller sites across Somerset, specifically to help resolve the major issues currently facing the town of Glastonbury. I would point out in support that Sarah Dyke MP discussed antisocial behaviour in Parliament in June last year at Prime Minister's questions. She urged the Prime Minister to give police in Glastonbury the resources they need to tackle the rising crime wave and stated that antisocial behaviour is scaring residents, deterring tourists and hitting local shops. Sarah herself declared this town deserves better. Furthermore, back in July 24, the planning inspector, Siobhan Watson, stated that antisocial behaviour and the appearance of vans on the roadside creates a fear of crime in the area, which makes visiting the area off-putting. A pattern of antisocial behaviour, she stated, and crime, which has arisen, has been demonstrated. Further, with reference to my question to the executive on the 13th of June 2025, I requested that Chris Hall update the council on the PSPO, which was unanimously voted in at Mendip as its final act prior to this unitary council coming into being. Still, there is no formal public explanation as to why this PSPO has not come into being. It was supposed to be part of a so-called suite of solutions, together with provision of site. In the absence of any real action, we now find ourselves in the position where the declaration of a state of emergency with relation to the lack of traveller site is currently our only option.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
Can I refer you to our standing orders around questions to executive? You've exceeded significantly the boundaries of the question that you've submitted. I will ask Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts to respond, but I do believe that you need to just reflect on how you ask your questions and the tone which you use.
I'm just giving background.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome, Bill.
Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts to respond.
Thank you for your question, Susanna. I do appreciate the challenges that you are facing in Glastonbury. I will answer the question that you've asked. However, I'm more than happy to come and visit again and see some of those challenges. I've previously been to a residents' meeting with Sarah Dyke that she organised, and I'm happy to again come along and speak to you directly. But in relation to the question that you've asked, it's helpful to clarify that the question refers to two distinct groups and sets of circumstances. Work is currently underway to bring forward a Meanwell site in Glastonbury for vehicle dwellers, alongside the development separately of a business case for a temporary stopping point for Gypsy, Romaner and Traveller communities. In parallel to this, a feasibility study is being commissioned to identify further opportunities across the county. Whilst this is a pressing and important matter, it is not considered appropriate to classify it as an emergency at this time, particularly when set against the scale of other acute pressures facing Somerset, including the county's very high levels of rust sleeping. But again, my office still stands to come and visit alongside you and Councillor Ewan, and I'm more than happy to come and speak to you about some of the challenges that you face.
Okay, thank you for the answer and to the question. Moving on to Councillor Dawn Denton.
Thank you very much. Almost every planning application is contentious, but in some instances, voicing an opinion can lead to intimidation, fear, and anxiety. In small communities, this has wide-reaching consequences on everyday living and can last for generations. I sit on the planning committee, so have never wanted to engage specifically with the process to ensure I am not predetermined. But the planning officers in Planning East offered an opportunity for the community to send their anonymous comments through me to the officers. I submitted each response without a name, but advised the residents that I would need to keep their details in the event of an appeal to ensure all information was accurate and truthful. And they all agreed. When a second contentious application came to the village, which would have driven a deeper wedge between communities, I again submitted about 30 anonymous comments. This was a logistical nightmare for the officers, which I totally understand. And it was agreed that I could gather all the anonymous comments and submit as one document, which would go onto the portal under my name, but the number of comments for and against would be referenced in the planning officer's report. I advised all my communities that this was what would be happening, and then the planning team advised me that this was no longer allowed. So could we please have a county-wide standard procedure to allow for anonymous comments? No one wants to make work for our planning teams, but the residents do need a voice if their concerns cannot be raised anonymously for fear of reprisal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Denton. Yeah, similarly, I've had residents contact me to submit comments on their behalf. I know it's an issue with some very contentious planning applications. Councillor Rigby to respond.
Thank you, Dawn. Thanks for raising this important issue. The vast majority of planning applications do not acknowledge or include anonymous comments on planning applications, and traditionally Somerset Council has taken this line. We understand the motivation for wanting to grant anonymity for comments, but we want to examine this issue in more detail. I think it's a really important issue for a lot of people in a small number of applications. And in order to ensure that there are no unintended consequences from making this policy change, we intend to undertake a review over the next 3 months to examine how we might be able to give effect to the request that you're putting forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that response. And yeah, I think this is increasingly there is a need for people to feel that they can submit comments without fear or favour. It's always a tricky one. Anyway, thank you very much to all members of the public and all councillors for your questions this morning. We did allow significantly extra time today to do that, but would ask that particularly councillors refer to our standing orders about their contributions. It is a question session, not a speech session, please. Agenda item 6, executive forward plan. I'm formally submitting the forward plan. Are there any comments or questions on it? Not seeing anything from executive members. Anything from other members on the forward plan? Okay, and we're happy just to note that as our record of our future business. And so we've got move on to reports for decision, and the first one is agenda item 7, additional funding for the highways and environmental maintenance activity, pages 63 to 74 in our sheets, and Councillor Richard Wilkins to introduce.
I'll keep this short. I'm sure you're all had enough of my voice for one day. This report is about backing up what we hear from residents time and time again, that while safety must always come first, the everyday visible condition of our roads, pavements and pathways really matters to people. We're proposing additional funding to tackle these high visible issues that frustrate communities: faded road markings, damage to sign, overgrown footways and cleaning drains. The task force approach set out in the paper will allow us to respond more quickly and flexibly to make a visible difference on the ground and show clearly that we're listening and acting on what matters to people locally. I'll just hand over straight away to Mike Adele-Jones for further details. I believe he's online.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. So just to add a little bit more detail to this, the aim is for an additional £5 million in revenue funding to be allocated for additional highways and environmental maintenance work over the next 3 years. So that's the broad aim. This is a specific decision to allocate the initial £2 million of that proposed fund. There is £1 million unspent as a carry forward from 25-26 for delivering council priorities, and £1 million from the 26-27 budget. So this will enable us to deliver some specific programmes in addition to our current planned and reactive service. So we're currently funded to focus mainly on safety critical issues, as Councillor Wilkins has said, but this funding will enable us to go further. The programmes are additional gully emptying, and there's a specific programme that we've developed for areas most at risk of flooding. There'll be a refresh of the road markings on priority A and B roads, refreshing and fixing signs on A and B roads, and all of those activities I've mentioned are to be delivered through our maintenance contract with Kia. In addition to that, we'll be cutting back more vegetation, particularly where this is encroaching on active travel routes, and that will be delivered by our in-house open spaces team, where we will employ an additional workforce to do that. Those additional operatives can also, whilst they're in an area, address wider issues whilst they're working there, such as clearing away litter and other minor jobs like removing graffiti, etc. So we're aiming to be quite flexible, I think, in the use of this resource to try and tackle some of those important issues that Councillor Wilkins has mentioned. So the funding beyond this initial decision will be subject to further decisions in next year in terms of the council's financial sustainability, and the budget setting next year will be considering the further £3 million allocation. So that's what I wanted to say by way of introduction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Adele-Jones. And Mike Rigby, would you like to kick off?
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I start off by thanking Councillors Revens and Wilkins for piloting this through. I think it's a really positive response to the kind of commentary that I think as councillors we all get from the public about the condition of the I guess the public highway network and the public realm. And I think beyond the safety issues, it's important that we do manage better issues like, for example, vegetation encroachment. We spent a lot of money over the years on active travel routes, and that kind of doesn't count for much if they very quickly become obstructed by hedges and verges. So I think it's a really important step forward. Thank you very much for all the work that's gone into it. I would just ask that as the councillor principally responsible for the delivery of public realm, that I'm on the steering group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts.
I, alongside Mike, want to welcome this coming forward. We all know many of our inboxes are full from queries from individuals who want to see more from us than just that general placemaking and looking after the area. It's great to see that we're using some of our in-house team alongside this, but also I'm a huge champion of the community payback scheme, so that then helps us along the way and also gives them skills and obviously paying back for some of the errors of their ways. So for me, this is a really positive step forward.
Yes, thank you. I also welcome this, and I know everybody who drives on our roads will welcome it. I have to say, and I'd just like to make everybody clear that our roads are a lot better than some others. If you drive around the country, you will find ours are much better. So great to hear this from the team. I'm really pleased about the road markings because I find them, as I get older, really useful, particularly at night. If the road markings aren't there, I'm not always sure whether the road is. Just two things. Is there any suggestion that we can do anything about the pothole next to the pothole question? I know this probably isn't part of this programme, but people are cross about potholes being done and the one next door not being done because it's not quite big enough, but it will be next week. That's the first thing. My second question is there any money in this programme to clean road signs? Because some of them are so filthy you can't read them. And although I would like to go out and clean them, I don't think I've got time at the moment. But some of my parishes have done some of that work. Thank you.
This will not relate to potholes, but we look very carefully about how we do our potholes. But as you've acknowledged, we comparatively are not perhaps as bad in the pothole situation as other councils, and we continually monitor the best practice and what actually works on the ground and where we get the best bang for buck, if you like, with pothole repairs. But it's an ongoing question. We don't always get it right, but I think on the whole, the state of our roads in comparison to other places is a testament to what we are achieving. As for sign clearing, I will defer to Mike, but I believe it is part of the suggestion. But what we don't want to do is step on the toes of parish councils that do a fantastic job of improving their local areas.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkins. Mr. O'Dowd-Jones, I think there's a wider point about coordination with our city, town and parish councils that undertake additional works for their communities as well. We don't want to tidy up things that have already been tidied up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. So we definitely still want to encourage the local action on the lower risk areas. There are plenty of areas of the highway network where local action can take place, and we've got our enhanced maintenance scheme, which we're still running with city, town and parish councils to enable that to happen. I think in the areas where it's more difficult to get to the signs and it would need traffic management, etc., then that's something we can certainly consider under this new initiative. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking around and not seeing any other comments from members of the executive, and I'll go to Councillor Helen Kay first.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and I also welcome this. It's very good and will support active travel, obviously. I'm just a bit concerned about the vegetation cutback. I'm assuming that it's going to be obviously focused on weeds on sort of active travel routes that make it difficult for cyclists or wheelchair users. I'm most concerned about cutting back hedgerows and overhanging trees, and I'm wondering if that work will be carried out during the summer. I know that when we have planning applications, we tend to ask people not to cut back hedgerows between March and September, or at times when birds are likely to be nesting. So I'm just wondering what kind of sensitivity is going to be brought to bear in looking at that work. and also whether our in-house contractors will be using Roundup and Glyphosate or Glyphosate, I'm not sure how you say it. The executive may not be aware that at Mendip District Council we passed a motion against the use of that chemical, and we weren't using it, and we were looking at different ways to keep our streets tidy. Now, of course, I mean, in Frome, I get the same comments about things not being clean and tidy. And we're trying to sort of re-educate the public to a certain extent around looking at a roundabout that's got lots of tall grass on it as being not weeds, but wildlife. So I've written to the officer already around the whether or not there's going to be a reintroduction of this chemical, Roundup or whatever it's called, proprietary name. And also my colleague Shane Collins has written, either accidentally or on purpose, I'm not sure, to all councillors about it, but we've had no answer on whether it will be reintroduced or not. I'm asking this partly because it relates to something further down that we're going to be discussing later about bringing in a checklist when we make these kind of decisions to test all of these decisions against. We have one for equalities, one for health and well-being, whatever, and we have one for climate change and sustainability. Well, obviously, it's going to help climate change and sustainability because we're going to be assisting and promoting active travel. But I'm wondering if officers who wrote the paper have actually thought about the impacts on biodiversity or of chemical residues of weed killer. And I wonder if I could be reassured that they have actually thought about that. Thank you.
I think Councillor Frederica Smith-Roberts is going to take that point.
Thank you, Helen, for your question. We will get you a full written response. I'm wondering if you can forward your email on to me because I've not seen it directly. I'm not even sure I've seen Shane's, but I have been off for a week or so. In relation to all the hedge cutting and the glyphosate, I'll include that in the written answer for everyone. But I do know our open spaces team have set process that they follow. They do understand biodiversity, but we'll get you a full written answer.
Okay, thanks for the question, and we'll get some of the detail on that. But yeah, our open spaces team will be fully cognizant of legislation around hedge cutting out of season. Go over to Bob.
Thank you, Leader. As the other members have said, I also welcome this proposal. I think it is really positive. These are the issues that we have raised with us as councillors all the time, and it's good that Councillor Wilkins and his team have taken on board some of the suggestions also that were made at full council as to how we could take things forward. I did want to ask a couple of questions if I could. It mentions within there that we want to respond to long-standing public concerns, but could there be a little bit more information as to how the public, our local councils and us as members can raise these items to go to this panel, how this panel operates, who actually decides which of those get taken forward, and how that is made public and how it is able to be held accountable by us as members?
Thank you, Bob. I don't have a direct answer to those concerns at the moment. We're still working through exactly how it will progress. But yeah, no, these are concerns that are being looked at and identified. So we will get back to you with a proper response to that in due course.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And Diogo?
Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions from me. I mean, there are loads which I won't ask, but perhaps two or three of the main ones is the £1 million that was underspent last year. I'm only wondering how that was underspent or what was not done that should have been done. And I mean, it's a good thing we've got that extra money to spend this coming year, but just wanting some background on that. The second one is a lot of the work being done, which is great, around gully emptying, vegetation management. End of November, town councils were asked to consider taking on additional services. And when I think about Bridgewater, we did take on gully cleaning and vegetation management, amongst other things. And I'm wondering whether a conversation has been had with town and parish councils that have increased their precept to take on additional services, because they'll be looking at this saying, oh, wait, how have you found the money to do the stuff that you told us that you probably couldn't do and we've had to take on? So just wondering if some thought's been given around that. And just the third and final question at this point is the ambition to invest £5 million over 3 years. That's really positive. But just conscious that we have got in the MTFS a cumulative budget gap of 75 million, I think it is, within 3 years. So I'm just wondering where that money is going to come from, or is there a magic money tree? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll trim the magic money tree back in accordance with the bird nesting season, of course. Liz, do you want to answer the budgetary questions? I'll take that.
Thank you, Councillor Diego. So in terms of budget, there's been £1 million built into the base budget for members' priorities. Nothing has been allocated to that, and they waited to the end of the financial year to have a look at that, and that's why now they're allocating as a rollover to add to the current £1 million that will come available for 26-27. The aspiration is to invest up to 5 million. That will be subject to us demonstrating financial sustainability when we look at the budget gap for 27-28. So that's the aspiration, but it will be subject to us having funding available to do that.
Okay, thanks everyone for your questions. Not seeing any more, and which leads us to the votes. So we've got recommendations in front of us to approve the carry forward, to note our wider ambition, and to agree the steering group approach. Councillor Wilkins to propose, Councillor Smith-Roberts to second. All those in favour, please. All those against, and just my personal thanks to all the officers who worked hard on bringing this scheme forwards. Really keen to see the impact that we can start to have as we move into the recovery phase from the financial emergency. Okay. So we're moving on to agenda item 8, which is the Somerset Council Climate and Ecological Vision. Councillor Graham Oakes to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Climate Vision builds on the original climate strategy, acting as an overarching document to the Council's climate, nature and water strategies. It sets out a slightly utopian view, but a goal that we must seek to achieve as we as the Council move forward. And I will hand over to my officer of the team to introduce the document further.
Good morning, James.
Morning. Just seeing if the slides are coming up. Just trying to share a second. Sorry. Apologies. I think it is. Is it shown on screen, on your screens? No. That's always a good start to a presentation. Sorry, apologies. I will go without the slides originally, but obviously the detail is in the report. To introduce, obviously, the vision, it's important to talk about some of the background as well. We have obviously declared a climate and ecological emergency, and we still have a live climate strategy in place. The climate change is very real. We're seeing it every day in Somerset and within our communities, most recently in obviously the January major incident was declared as well. We need to work radically with our communities, make a real change. And this vision document brings across that utopian approach where we see that end goal. So there's a lot still needed between now and that end goal we're aware of. As Councillor Oakes has introduced, this is an overarching document. It's seen as that utopian vision, but we see a lot of our current strategies and the future strategies sitting underneath this vision document. So strategies like the local nature recovery strategy, which was agreed, I think, last month. We've got future flood risk strategies, energy investment plans, and the current climate strategy are just some of those strategies and policy documents which will sit underneath this vision. The vision has aligned with other partners' strategies and policies and is linking in with a number of community initiatives and actions. As we've also mentioned, the vision is that call for sight, call to action. Sorry, that's another work stream. The call to action. We know that we can't do this on our own. We know we need to be working in partnership with others. So this is really a call to action to other partners, to our communities, to try and share these challenges and to work together to meet the overall climate and ecological emergency. I will finish just by sort of highlighting the recommendations. The executive is asked to obviously review and make comments and feedback onto the vision document, and hopefully support with the adoption of this vision document. Related to this and to the following report that Mark will be bringing forward, there is obviously an additional recommendation from the Scrutiny Committee, which is around the 2030 targets, seeing if the executive would formally review and clarify recommendations around reviewing that 2030 targets. The detail of that recommendation is in the report, but just to highlight that some of the Climate and Place Scrutiny Committee members have highlighted 2040 or 2045 being potentially a more realistic scale target. I will stop there. Any questions?
Any comments, questions, please? Well, Heather.
Give me, it's not a question, but it's certainly a comment. I just think the vision document is lovely. I mean, I know it's been in a silly way. I mean, it is very illustrative. I love all the way the figures have been presented, and I think it's really good. I love the kind of the cycle and the, you know, and also including our partners. So it's just a comment really to say, it's really nice to see some good quality. It's not a surprise, but it's really nice to see some good quality literature coming forward, and I think it makes it incredibly readable. So I just want to give that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to say exactly the same as Heather, as in it is a really brilliantly designed document, and I'm hoping that one day soon we may actually acknowledge on some of these documents that where they've been designed in-house. So our in-house graphic designers have done this work, and I think it is exceptional work. And quite apart from the fact that it really needs to be done, and we all know living in Somerset that we're kind of on the sharp end of climate change on many occasions. But if you want people to read your vision documents, they need to be easy to read and well illustrated, and this one certainly is. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, not only was the quality of the content, but the quality of design was exemplary. I see we've got Peter Elliott in the room. I would just, if you could pass that back onto the graphics team, just how highly impressed we were with that part of the work, as well as James, to your team with the content as well. Sarah.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with this too, and I'm really pleased that we're pursuing this. It's a difficult climate to do it in, and that's not meant to be a joke, but it is, and so I'm pleased about that. I just wanted to ask a question. You say in your next steps that we will develop partnerships with public and private sectors, communities, utility providers, academic and industry experts. Could you just illustrate that as a little bit of how you expect that partnership to work? And I know that that means also access to funding as well, but I know there are some very interested bodies out there that want to work with us, but it would just be nice to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, certainly. In some areas of the work streams are already quite advanced. So in the nature aspects, the local nature recovery strategy is also helping us to drive forward a lot of partnership work. And we already have the local nature partnership established, which is a key strategic partnership of local agencies which are working already at pace towards the 2030 goals and the aspects around the local nature recovery strategy and our ecological emergency. I think the climate area is a bit more challenging. That's an area that we need to be working more quickly on and at pace with a number of key partners across the council. I think a broader strategic partnership is something that we're trying to explore, how we can create a climate partnership for Somerset, because as Somerset Council, we understand our baseline, and we're to discuss that in a minute. So we understand the service plans that we need to deliver to meet our objectives. But actually, as a council, we can guide, we can show leadership, but we shouldn't be dictating to a broader Somerset. So it's quite important that we do start looking at creating a partnership to look at the climate change agenda with our water services. That comes across both in terms of climate and nature, and we're already working very closely with other risk management authorities and providers in the area of flood management and resilience across Somerset. So there's there's a lot to do. There's a lot of different balls being juggled and plates being spun, but a broader strategic climate partnership is something that we're trying to explore.
Okay, and Federica?
Thanks again, echoing everyone's comments that this is a brilliant document, both in its substance but also in its design. For me, I'm wondering how we can, or what plans you have about communicating this out to residents, whether there's an infograph for our social media. That cyclist is really profound at just how far we have come and just all the work that you, the team, the rest of the council, and showing actually we have got a grip on it. There is still lots to do, but I just think there's something there about how we communicate to everyday residents.
I think it's a necessity, especially as part of our service plan. Culture change is a crucial element of the action planning that Mark and the team are looking at. It's a key area that we need to explore further, is about how we can actually reach a broader spectrum of our communities. We're already doing a lot of work with the communications team, redesigning the current website, social media, as well as trying to work and align more broadly with partners. So it's an area of work stream that we need to do more in, and I completely agree with you that reaching out to the communities is a critical pathway for us.
Thank you. I think that's all members of the executive that want to speak. So online I've got Councillor Helen Kay. Oh, let's change the order. I did have Dave down second and Henry third, and now it's changed order. I wonder why that happened. How mysterious. So Councillor Helen Kay first.
Oh, okay, thank you. I thought Dave was going to go first. Yeah, Dave was first, and I'm happy to give up my place to him if you agree.
I'm more than happy for Dave to go first. Let's
okay,
let's not play turns the ages.
Thanks.
I'd be happy for others to go first. I feel.
Oh
I may
my word!
Sum up, if that's okay.
You're all so polite.
So Dave, what are you doing, Dave?
Helen, can you go, please?
Okay, thank you. Really, yeah, I welcome this. Obviously, it's great. I'm a bit concerned about the action plan going forward. I know that we've got limited resources. One of the appendixes here talked about all the different climate emergencies that were declared by the predecessor councils, mostly in 2019, I think. And then each district council got itself an action plan, and so did the county council. And then there was an overriding climate strategy as well. So I am a bit concerned about us reinventing the wheel a little bit. At Mendip, we had an officer, we put 100,000 aside. We had an officer that spent 2 years doing a carbon baseline just for Mendip, and we had lots of discussions about whether we were going to go for a descent plan under option 1, 2 or 3. That took 2 years. Then we had another year where we set ourselves some targets, and then and we were actually starting to work towards those targets. And we had 2 sets of targets. We had a 2023 target because we knew that we were likely to wind up at that point, but we also had a 2030 target. And then we worked out some ways of measuring it, and we got going with it. And at our last full council meeting, we had done we'd achieved about 50% of our tree planting target and 7% of our retrofit target. I don't think that matters, because I think it's good to have the ambition. I mean, it does matter, obviously, but my concern is that work has been lost. It wasn't reported in the minutes. We had a conversation in our very last full council meeting about how well we'd done on this, and for some reason a 5-minute discussion on that was completely erased from the minutes, which were then approved by Somerset Council because it was the last full council meeting of Mendip. But that process aside, I have some documents if the officers would like to see them on the progress that we made at Mendip. I'm a bit concerned about the fact that we have a 5-year term now, and we're 4 years in, and we've done a carbon baseline, and we've done a climate vision. We've lost the combined staff, I believe, from the districts and the county was where there were 13 staff. We now have 2. or three, possibly three. I'm just really concerned about how we're going to deliver this and when. And I'd really like urgently to see a timeline for and how we're going to. Yeah, I think officers are already working on performance indicators, but that in itself can take a long time. And I'm really concerned that in some ways, I'd like the Lib Dems to get in next time because I want to see this continue on. I don't want it to then be put on a shelf. I actually want to see these actions taken. And I suppose my question is that when are we going to see a timeline for an action plan and to start delivering on the action plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kay, for that endorsement. It was unexpected, I will ask Mr. Deval to respond on the substantive question, which is around the timeline.
Yeah, for the purposes of continuity, I say that, Bill.
We're open to offers, of course.
I'm probably not going to answer the timeline. In terms of the timeline, that's the timeline set to me by the executive. I will work towards the timeline, set for me as a service. I think for me, in terms of action plan, that's where, as a service, I can deliver a service delivery plan. Mark has one that we're working with other services across the council because it is about a collective plan to meet this agenda. This isn't just a climate service plan, it is a Somerset Council plan. So the challenge we have obviously is competing priorities across services, and that's part of our role, is to try and influence those work streams to see if we can deliver those at a quicker pace if we possibly can. And I think there's a number of different services that we're trying to do that with at this moment in time, whether that be estates, whether that's education, whether that's our highways functions. We're working with our services to try and meet the challenging, I think, set of actions that we put in place. I've also got a portfolio holder and a scrutiny committee which will hold me to account and check on progress. So I know that there are update reports planned. Councillor Mansell will probably be discussing the need to actually see some of the action plans in the next couple of months as part of that scrutiny function. So there's a lot still ongoing. In terms of timeline, I go for the timeline I'm given.
Okay. So sorry, can I ask who dictates that timeline then? Who is that dictates that timeline?
As far as I'm aware, it's the executive that sets the target date. I work towards that target date.
So that could be a proposal from officers to the executive, or from scrutiny to the executive. I just want to understand the process. Sorry.
Yeah, we do need to move on. I understand that was in the scrutiny recommendations, and I believe Councillor Hobhouse and Councillor Mansell, I'm just going to predict they might want to raise that, but I wouldn't want to make that assumption. Councillor Hobhouse, good morning.
Thanks. Good morning. I thought Dave Mansell was definitely before me.
Let's not play that game. Councillor Hobhouse, we were trying to answer the question earlier as to whether there was a Hobhouse on the original Somerset County Council 137 years ago today. I don't know whether you have that question to your answer to your fingertips, but please proceed.
I do have the answer to my fingertips, and the answer is yes, there was. The whole fundamental basis of the way forward has changed on December the 19th this year, when the proposals for the nutrient neutrality were changed, and the funding of the work on the environment on the Somerset levels and moors will now have a funding stream. And that funding stream should allow us to get some data. It should allow us to start changing what is actually happening on the levels and moors, to try and increase the amount of CO2 that is taken in and stored on those moors, as opposed to us freeing the CO2 which has been stored for generations there. And I think that we need to be looking very carefully at the, and I'm going to get it wrong, the environmental EDPs. James will correct me. And we need to be looking very carefully who has control of the money that is coming from the mitigation on the houses that are built, because that would and should fund us going forward. Thank you.
Okay, I can see Mr. Hall reaching for his microphone.
Yes, just to point out that the reference that Councillor Hobhouse is making is to do with Natural England's proposals around environmental delivery plans and the way in which they would fund via developers mitigation for nutrient neutrality, as well as restoration of the levels and more. So as it stands at the moment, we, through the lead member and I, are in consultation with Natural England, as well as the planning service, as you would expect, to get an understanding as to when Somerset might receive its environmental delivery plan and how we can best engage in that process.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Hobb. Do you want to come in on this point, Councillor Rigby? So just stand by, Councillor Mansell. Mr. Councillor Rigby wants to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Really briefly, I met with Matthew Penny-Cook and Gideon Amos and a number of other people, Matthew Penny-Cook being the Housing Minister last week, and we raised the issue of EDP delivery timescales. So it's on government radar as something that needs to be done quickly. We didn't get an answer as to a date, but hopefully it won't be too long.
We had a meeting with government and we didn't get an answer on a date.
Yeah, I regret that I failed you, sir.
Okay, I'm sure they'll be working at pace. If not, I'll write them a stiffly worded letter. Thank you, Councillor Hobhouse, for your question. And now we turn to Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, yeah. Now, the climate vision, it sounds good, and yes, it looks good as well. But I fear that it is not going to change much, if anything. I'd like to quote just a very short section from page 3 on the UK net zero target by 2050. And the vision says, Somerset is striving to deliver carbon neutrality much sooner than the national target, but without greater coordinated and localised ownership and action, the vision will not be realised. Now, it looks to me that there are several problems with the vision. One has been mentioned, and it's a big one. There is no action plan alongside it. Now, Scrutiny has been requesting sight of such action plans for a very long time, where we are talking about going back years now. Also at Scrutiny, we have raised that there is a lack of corporate capacity to deliver the climate emergency agenda. The Council has a small team. They are committed and they are working hard, but there need to be more officers in the team and they need more support. Now further, as Scrutiny Committee has raised on several occasions and is stated in your report, the 2030 target, both for council operations and for Somerset, needs to be reviewed. The target has not been guiding council policies or practices, and it is not providing a basis for officers to plan pathways to net zero. It has to be observed that most, if not all, council strategies and plans consider the government's 2050 target, but not the council's 2030 target. It is largely being ignored because it's not providing a guide anymore. It was set long ago, and what was needed to get there hasn't been done. Now, Scrutiny Committee has been told that a review of the 2030 target needs to be decided by the Executive when we've raised it. Could I ask that you agree to this? And I further suggest that you return the request by asking Scrutiny to undertake the review. This would be a good project for a cross-party task and finish group, with recommendations brought back to the relevant Scrutiny Committee, and if then okay, onto Executive and maybe onto full council. A review should aim to provide an ambitious guide on working towards net zero for the council and for officers, which is also realistic and has a practical focus. I hope you will agree to this review. I hope you will also note the need for an action plan to accompany the vision, and in time to increase the size of the corporate climate team. For now, the main request from Scrutiny Committee is to agree to a review of the 2030 targets. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a response to that? Councillor Oakes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Kay, for your comments, which have underlined the need to progress the work that we've been doing, and I think you've made the case quite eloquently for why 2040 and 2045 would be a disastrous decision for the people of Somerset. There was the use of the word utopian. Well, the opposite of that is dystopian, and people who advocate waiting, which is the truth of the matter, to 2045, 2050, let down the people of this county. That isn't the way forward, and I'm disappointed with that. Councillor Hobhouse once again is coming up with a way he hopes to find funding to help this project, and every time I see Henry, he does come up with exciting ideas, and every penny that we spend on addressing the challenges before us is a penny invested in our future and the future of our grandchildren. Councillor Mansell and I do rarely agree on things, but I must agree that it's important that we do have that action plan that is in hand, and it will be coming to scrutiny, and that is something that he and I entirely agree on. We also agree on the fact that there is a lack of corporate capacity. We are where we are, and we will need to seek to address this when resources are available. Where we will not agree and cannot agree is that the way to achieve this is by basically kicking the can down the road, because this is local government. Local government works at its best when it's put under pressure. Not if you allow local government 50 years to do something, it will take 50 years to do something, and then proudly announce it achieved it in 50 years' time. This particular scheme is far too important. Far too important. It may not be an issue for some of us, because we're getting on a bit now, but for our grandchildren, this is the issue that we face. And I cannot support a target of 2040 or 2045 or 2050, as some people on scrutiny have already prejudiced themselves, saying this is what they want. So I don't believe a referral to scrutiny on that issue is appropriate. They've told us their views, we've listened. I may be a lone voice on this executive believing that it's best to go for a hard target and seek to achieve it than one that you may fail to achieve in 20, 30 years' time. So Councillor Mansell and I will continue to disagree on this item, but I would urge the executive to stick with a target. I would rather the target was achieved in 2032 or 33 than it was in 45 or 50. And I believe we have to push the small team that we have as hard as we can, because we owe it to our grandchildren.
Thank you for the response, Councillor Oakes, and you have my wholehearted support on that. These issues around climate, we can't push them back to a committee to discuss a date. We need to push forward and get an action plan. That is where I want us to be. I don't want us to be bouncing this back and forwards before scrutiny. I think we need an action plan, and we need scrutiny to hold us to account for that action plan. What we don't need is a task and finish group to discuss which date is the appropriate target, because I think that will actually make very little difference to the outcomes. Mr. Deval, you wanted to speak again?
Yeah, I was just going to highlight, we have got an action plan in place. Yeah, Mark is working towards an action plan. The challenge we've had around sharing it has been service plans are seen as operational tools. they're things that across the organisation we use to set our targets, and it's normally a senior management will review the KPIs and the deliveries around that. However, I think in this case, it's one of those areas we've discussed with members that potentially more transparency of that plan is needed, and maybe some workshops across parties to be able to see what is involved in that action plan, being able to highlight some of the key challenges that we're trying to overcome. I think the worry and concern is how big that action plan could actually become once we've had one of those workshops. I think it's a must, really, just to provide that transparency and to provide all members options. So that was an ask, I think, post last scrutiny meeting, if I remember right. So we're going to try and set up a workshop to be able to showcase the service plan.
Okay, thank you very much for those responses. Not seeing any other members indicating. So if we've got a proposal. So Graham is moving the recommendation, which is to support the adoption of the Somerset Council Climate and Ecological Vision, seconded by Councillor Wakefield. All those in favour, please. All those against? That is clearly carried. And we move on to agenda item 9. We are ahead of schedule, so we may get agenda item 10 and our equality objectives squeezed in before lunchtime. If we are really well behaved. Let's see whether we can manage it. So agenda item 9, Somerset Council Carbon Baseline 23-24. Councillor Oakes again to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. I've taken the hint. I'll be brief. Today I'm bringing to the Executive the Somerset Council Carbon Baseline Report, which quantifies the Council's greenhouse gas emissions, referred to in the report as GHGs, for the vesting year of 23-24.
Fortune.
Thank you, Councillor Oakes. My name's Mark Fortune. I'm the Climate Emergency Service Lead, so I'll briefly be running through the Carbon Baseline Report. Some of the information's on the screen. So as we've discussed just briefly, obviously we've talked about the carbon declaration, the climate emergency declarations in 2019 and the climate emergency strategy. So this kind of baseline is built from that previous work and the previous work undertaken by the legacy councils, which has also been discussed. The baseline kind of represents the line in the sand from which we can move forward from. We can track our progress against those targets. And the baseline has been produced following greenhouse gas protocol methodologies, kind of recognised standard. It's been prepared and validated with the collaboration of the climate team and our external partners, WSP, and it kind of uses all the recognised and appropriate emissions factors to calculate the baseline. Just very briefly, the carbon footprint also includes all scopes. So there are 3 scopes, depending on the activity and the type of control the organisation has over them. So within this baseline report, there is reporting information on scope 1, which is kind of direct emissions, which arise from sources that are owned and controlled by the council. Primarily, that's the fuel used in vehicles and the fuel used in heating our buildings. Scope 2, which is the indirect emissions, which is from the emissions arising from energy we purchase from the grid, so the kind of electricity. And also scope 3, which includes a basket of actions and activities, but primarily that's made up from the goods and services we purchase as a council. Also business travel and staff commuting. There were some significant challenges in putting the baseline together. We've obviously mentioned around the 5 legacy councils, the quality and availability of data, capturing and recording information was particularly challenging. It took quite a long time to identify the relevant kind of data owners and the various service areas, complicated obviously by the transition as we moved into a unitary council. There were also issues around inconsistent record keeping, varying formats that we inherited from the various legacy councils. So where gaps have occurred in this baseline, we have used either previous year's information or we've used recognised proxy data to kind of complete and fill in the gaps. So it's important to recognise that it's imperfect in nature, and it always will be because of the challenges in collecting this information. But like we say, we're obviously now looking forwards and using this as our baseline. So the total emissions from the vesting year of 23-24 was just shy of 231,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent, of which about 9,500 tonnes arises from kind of scopes 1 and 2, the kind of more controllable emissions. But a large percentage of our emissions are arising from that scope 3 emissions, 96%, or about 221,000 tonnes of carbon comes from those goods and services we buy, water, waste transactions, employee commuting, business travel, leased assets, etc. Also, our housing stock, our social housing is also included within that. So what have we done? Obviously, this went to scrutiny in October. So we're obviously not stood still. We're moving forward. We recognise the urgency in improving the quality of this data. So we've been working with data owners across the council to kind of identify and capture the information and create a single point of data capture, so it's much easier to report going forward, making it all smoother and efficient. We have a much higher confidence in the data we've now captured. For example, previously electricity and gas bills that were being recorded in multiple different systems, that's all now been standardized into the single system. Any rogue bills that have not been included in that system are also now being picked up by our energy team. We're also adding our water billing into that same system. There's been big progress made within the fleet service. Obviously, going back to 23-24, we just inherited all the various fleets from around the local authorities. So now there is a single fuel card system. So unlike the previous 3 or 4 systems that are in use, so all of that, all vehicle fuel is being recorded on the fuel cards, but also not only that, but handheld tools and machinery is also being, fuel is being tracked through those fuel card usage. The fleet team have also just been installing telematics into about 580 vehicles. So going forward, we will have a much better handle on the way that those vehicles are being transported, the amount of miles they're using. So that will also help with future baseline reporting. And another thing that was discussed at scrutiny was identifying and auditing the kind of existing renewable energy systems. So it's understanding what the kind of council already have as a corporate estate, understanding how much energy is being generated from our solar systems, and understanding kind of, in effect, how much cost we're avoiding by using those systems. This is kind of particularly pertinent as the fluctuations in energy prices at the moment we're seeing. So if there's an opportunity to use energy on our own buildings, that's a great opportunity there. And finally, we're working with the internal IT teams to develop a Power BI dashboard to report this information, to kind of show the trend, reporting the tracking and trending information, and be able to drill into sort of areas of where emissions are arising. There was also a recommendation from scrutiny that obviously we should continue to report the carbon baseline, and we are in the process of doing that. Obviously, we've just completed a year, so we're now collecting all of the data for 25-26, and we'll be bringing that forward to report to scrutiny in the autumn, by the time it's given us time to kind of collect and validate the data and build the report. Finally, the recommendation is obviously to recognise and adopt the carbon baseline for 23-24 and consider the recommendations proposed by scrutiny. Those recommendations we've obviously covered, but it was about looking at the 2030 carbon neutrality target, and also about future reporting of the carbon baseline through the scrutiny process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fortune. Can I just check with the second of the scrutiny recommendations? Are you happy to report that back to the scrutiny committee on a regular basis, so that recommendation is accepted?
Yeah, the plan is that we'll now be running a baseline, a footprint report every year going forward, and it will be reported. So obviously the data will need to be collected and processed, and then autumn will be the reporting process. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Any comments from executive members? Councillor Shearer.
Hi, thank you for this. It's really good work. And just a couple of things. It's around that table you put up on page 114 and some of the commentary on 115. It's about the fact that I guess something's about benchmarking with others, because as you say, a lot of the others around us don't put in the scope 3. So I think that's just an interesting thing, and I'm glad that we are. And it looks like that 70% is going to be one of the biggest nuts to crack, I expect. So I think but what I'm wondering is if there's value in a sense, rerunning the numbers just on scope 1 to see how well we're doing even on scope 1 against our neighbours. I don't know if that's something you would think about. Obviously, you can't leave scope 3 in because all the numbers are wrong. but I think that might be something helpful to see. And the other one was on that goods and services and the wider contracty sort of work, the third party. I'm just wondering whether you are linking in with the work that Theo referenced earlier on around third party spend and transformation work around third party spend, just to make sure that we've not got two contracty things going but not talking to each other about it, as it were. I'm sure you're on it, but just to make sure that all, you know, that you're working with procurement, with transformation, with all the rest of it. On the third party spend in the transformation sense will have a very direct outcome or target they're working to, but we don't want to, you know, we want to make sure that everything ties up where we can.
Thank you. Yes. So in terms of the tracking of the scope 1 and 2 trends, you're right that a lot of councils are looking at carbon neutrality by excluding all of scope 3, which is very convenient, but doesn't actually help us solve the climate crisis. In terms of benchmarking, absolutely. What we've been working to do is to understand the totality of our vehicle fleet, because obviously different councils have different vehicle fleets, etc. So the idea is we would hopefully kind of come to an averaged either emissions per vehicle, or understand how we can track and benchmark against similar councils. So we're looking at Cornwall, we're looking at Wiltshire, we're looking at Dorset as large unitary authorities, rural authorities with similar challenges that we have. In terms of the kind of the difficult bit of scope 3, absolutely. We're starting to see that we're building into some of the future contracts around carbon reporting information. So it's already within the highway contracts. The 5 highway contracts have got carbon reduction targets within them. We're asking them to report information to us so we can better understand the makeup of that scope 3 emissions. At the moment, it's based on spend, and it's a very crude number. You know, it's like a product category that says, you know, if you bought a certain goods and service, there's a corresponding carbon category for it, and that's how we've multiplied that figure. Ideally, we would get to a position where all our contractors were providing us that scope 3 information, but with over 4,000 contracts, it's going to be particularly challenging. But we're looking at the higher spend contracts as a starting point.
Okay, I'm not seeing any. Councillor Latham.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind colleagues that when we were budget setting at the beginning of March, we did include a modest growth item so that we could have clean renewable energy through Crown Commercial Services, and Councillor Wilkins will remind me that this is his portfolio, but in the capital programme there is significant investments to complete the LED street lighting and to move to central control for the first time. So I think we need to remember those two when we are looking at the action plan and where else we can go, of course, and looking at things like the Octagon project and the move to LED there as well.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it's worth remembering that there are also, although we fully take on board the comment about corporate capacity that have been made, and we all know the context that those decisions have had to be made. But it's important to recognise that green thread needs to run through many council areas as well, not just be a small team that are isolated away. Councillor Wilkins.
I'd just like to thank Councillor Lasham for reminding us of the work that's done in highways, but it doesn't just stretch to lighting. For instance, our major schemes team reduced the amount of carbon considerably when they did the Wellington bypass work. So it's worth noting that it's very much a part of how we think in highways across the board.
Indeed, and yeah, we can start opening up public transport and active travel as well if we wanted to prolong that discussion. Not seeing any other executive members wanting to comment, so we'll go to Councillor Mansell online.
Okay, yep, thanks again. Yeah, firstly, scope 3, absolutely important that we address these. That they are actually 96% of the council's emissions, so they are vitally important. I'd like to draw your attention to something on page 12 on pathways. Now it says in the report, as section 2.2 right at the bottom, to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030, Somerset's territorial emissions in that year would need to be offset with verified carbon credits. And it then says, i.e. 2,660,000 offset credits would need to be purchased. When the report came to scrutiny, there was an indication of how much that would cost. It would run into many millions. And perhaps the point to bear in mind is if you're achieving carbon neutrality by buying offsets, you're still emitting fossil fuels. You're not dealing with the problem that we're causing. So the offsetting approach is not a sensible way forward. It doesn't tackle the problem, and it will cost the council a small fortune. I have a feeling Clive Heapy may have something to say about that. So, you know, we do need to be aware of what we're doing and how we're going to get there. It has been suggested that we could have insetting, and so to pay for our emissions, we could actually fund other parts of the council to do things right. That makes more sense, especially given our financial circumstances. And I will just like to conclude that it's taken a very long time to get to an action plan, and we're still not seeing an action plan, and we still don't know when an action plan is going to be seen. Scrutiny has been pressing for it for a long time, so I hope the message has got home that we need that with some urgency now. It's a shame it's being left to the last year of the council, and I wonder what we will see when it comes out. We also do need a sensible guide to how the council proceeds, and for me, I don't see how you can work without it, and perhaps, you know, where we're now getting to is a reflection that may be lacking. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hobhouse. Mr. Duval, do we have a projected timeline for the production of the much anticipated action plan?
I will make sure Councillor Mansell sees the service plan. We've got that service plan. It's a large document. What I've tried to do within scrutiny reports is provide high-level overviews of that plan, what performance in terms of what we're delivering, how are we working towards the various different policies and strategies. Like the energy investment plan is a 12-month update review that's coming up for scrutiny. I think within the next month or two. I will make sure that one of my top priorities is getting that multi-party workshop in place so they can see the service plan. It's so large it would take up the entire scrutiny, hence why I feel that a separate forum as such to be able to look at it and discuss it is probably needed. I will make sure I get onto that.
Okay, I'm content with that approach. Councillor Hobhouse, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I entirely agree with what Dave Mansell actually said, but I want to add something else as well. At the moment, we are using Microsoft computing. It is probably our biggest electrical use throughout the council. And I would ask the question why we're not using Thin Client, which saved 30% of the electricity use at South Somerset. I would ask the question why we are not looking at covering our car parks in solar panels, which would increase our generation of electricity. And I would bring up the question which I brought up on the transformation discussions, which is the cost of AI in terms of environmental damage and CO2 production. Thank you.
Mr. Fortunes decided to take that one.
Just a couple of points to come back on. So we are currently working with the South West Net Zero Hub to explore opportunities for solar on council car parks. So that work is part of the energy investment plan. It's one of the actions within that document. So we're hoping that the South West Net Zero Hub will fund some of that exploratory information. going on to the AI conversation, myself and my colleague and some of the colleagues from our IT team are part of a council group looking at AI and the challenge around the use of AI and the carbon impact of AI as well. So that is kind of a council-wide issue. It's a growing problem that I think a lot of councils are facing, and understanding how we can reduce the impact is absolutely essential, as you said. Just one other point as well. There was we were talking about the offsetting and insetting opportunities. That's also another piece of work that's part of that action plan, exploring how we would go about coming up with a policy around offsetting and insetting. So I think all of those things are, like you say, within that action plan that will come forward shortly.
Hey, thank you for those answers, Mr. Fortune. Not seeing, and just under the wire, Diogo.
I won't be very long at all, honestly.
Excellent. We'll hold you to that.
Only because it's already been kind of mentioned previously, but just one of the recommendation does say to note or whatever it is about the scrutiny comments as well, and it does talk about that 2030 target again. I appreciate it's been mentioned, but I'm really just interested in scrutiny is obviously given that a lot of time. There is a corporate risk to that timeline too. I'm assuming that scrutiny, having not been there, have been given quite a good background information as to why perhaps it's not achievable. It looks like officers are probably waving a flag. Scrutiny has seen that, and I'm just wondering what kind of evidence or you have that actually we can achieve that when there's a corporate risk that it's probably not achievable, and scrutiny have said this ain't going to happen really.
Chief Executive, are you going to have a stab at that one?
I might need the question clarifying that I'm being asked to answer, if that's okay. But
so the question was to the executive, because one of the recommendations on the executive thing here is for the executive to consider the recommendations from scrutiny. So it's actually to the executive. There's obviously that corporate risk on that 2030 timeline. So officers have seen that and have raised it. Scrutiny have obviously seen detailed reports, have been given a briefing on this and have recognised that risk as well. I'm just wondering what it is or what evidence it is that the executive have to choose not to kind of go along with that or to take that action in terms of revising that 2030 date.
I think Councillor Oakes very clearly answered that one before. But maybe you were distracted. Councillor Oakes, briefly, do you want to just respond to that one?
You don't want the full passion thing again? No. Essentially, that the scrutiny members came up with a range of answers, and if they've been provided with one set of evidence and come up with multiple answers, then whilst I have no difficulty with the evidence, I have a difficulty with the answers. Remembering my maths tests in the past and the reason I kept failing exams. One answer is usually the best one. In this case, the argument is what is the most effective way, what will have the biggest effect on this organisation to tackle the biggest challenge it faces. And a range of dates suggests to me, and I have to vote as an exec member and is that a range of dates suggests that there is a view that it's difficult to achieve and that maybe we should set a later date, which is far more likely to be achieved. However, imagine your house is on fire and you can set a time for the fire engine to arrive in 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, it's more likely to arrive. However, I prefer it in 3 minutes because I would like a house to be in some level and my family rescued. And that is the kind of situation we are in. This is an emergency. We in Somerset know better than perhaps other parts of the country because we see the effects and the way they've changed in our own lifetime. Those of us who are locals will know flooding is different to what it used to be and in different places. The team are working hard on it. We need to back that team as best we can. And I'm confident that once not scrutiny, but the whole council get the opportunity to see this briefing opportunity and go through these issues, then the council will agree that there are steps that must be taken now and that is the important thing, not an arbitrary decision on when the war ends.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Oakes. I think you used the grandparent point in your earlier answer, and yeah, I was reflecting on that, having become a grandparent and fairly recently, and being very aware that I'm thinking about what would my grandson be asking me in 20 years' time about the climate emergency. Would it be that we changed the target because it was hard, and we might fail? Well, I'd rather fail honourably than change the goal posts here and tick a box. I think it's the action plan that I want to press forwards with, and not not change the goalposts here. Anyway, that's my view. So we've got recommendations in front of us to recognise and adopt. Sorry, the Somerset Council Carbon Baseline 23-24. That is proposed by Councillor Oakes and seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. Those in favour and those against, that's clearly carried. And I do believe we've got time to get our equality objectives in before lunchtime. Mr. Fortune, Mr. Duval, thank you so much for all your hard work on this. I know you are a small team, but you are mightily effective. Be replaced equally by a small and mightily effective team. We welcome Mr. Rutland and Frederica Smith-Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Definitely a small and mighty team. So today we're asked to adopt a refreshed set of equality objectives for the next 4 years, alongside our updated equality, diversity and inclusion strategy and the revised equality impact assessment framework. These documents are essential to ensuring that we at Somerset Council continue to meet its legal duties under the Equality Act 2010, and more importantly, continues to act as a fair, inclusive and responsible public body. Our current objectives come to an end in 2026, and this new framework gives us a clear, measurable direction for the next 4 years. These priorities are shaped by evidence, we've done community engagement, and it's our commitment to deliver meaningful, practical improvements for the people of Somerset. We originally had a long list of objectives that were driven by data, and then through engagement, we have now 4 objectives as outlined on page 133. The revised equality impact assessment process will ensure that equality considerations continue to be properly embedded in every major decision we make, helping us meet both the general and specific duties placed on us as a public authority. And by agreeing these recommendations today, we are also committing to an annual review that ensure transparency and accountability as we move forward. I'd like to thank Tom and the team for their thorough work in bringing this together. I'm pleased to support the recommendations, and I invite you to endorse these because they continue to ensure that Somerset is a fair, inclusive and provide opportunities to our residents.
Thank you. I'd say Councillor Theo Philip as well to introduce. Are you surprised by that?
No.
Okay. That's all right then. I assume that's with your HR hat on.
I think Councillor, presumably, I think Councillor Smith-Roberts has done a more than adequate job of introducing it. I don't have a huge amount to add to what she's said. I just want to highlight Objective B, which is to work towards being an anti-racist organisation with a review of progress by 2027. I hear a lot of rhetoric in politics and outside about race, about how you can't call people racist, how people don't like talking about racial issues. This county is becoming much more multiracial and much more diverse. And I think it ill behoves anyone to minimise the impact of racism in what is still an institutionally racist country that we live in. And too often I hear that being denied. So I'm very pleased to see working towards being an anti-racist organisation as one of our objectives.
Thank you, Councillor Philip. Mr. Rutland, Tom, would you like to introduce the report, please?
I could add nothing to my illustrious colleagues that have contributed, so I should be quiet. Thank you.
Well, that is a surprising but welcome statement. If I might be simple. Councillor Oakes.
Chair, it's a truly excellent report. However, there is, in my opinion, and I apologise for the very late nature of kind of noticing this. I was focused on saving the planet and missed this part of my role. And there is an element of my portfolio that sits in this, and that is, I believe that as we are charged, and certainly our Director of Public Health is charged with improving population health and well-being, and tackling health inequalities, which we're just launching a report upon at the present time, is there should be a small element of this paper that actually deals with those issues around health inequalities, which are a significant factor in our county. And I had the pleasure of a discussion with the Chief Medical Officer for England just on Friday about those issues. So I would like, and I'm not sure whether it's achievable, whether we could, I'm aware that Mr. Rutland is aware of this, and that we are suggesting we add a paragraph to this. I'm not sure procedurally how we do that at this point. I don't want to be an obstructive one in the way, but at the same time, I just think it's an omission, in my opinion.
Councillor Lation.
Thank you. I don't think we've addressed Councillor Oakes' concern yet, or how we can address that.
Okay.
Can we do that first, please?
Yeah,
Chair?
absolutely. Mr. Rutland.
So having spoken to our illustrious Director of Public Health this morning, we've agreed that I'm more than happy to include a paragraph within the strategy document that connects to and talks about the connection with health inequality and how equality contributes to and is part of that. So I'm more than happy to include that within the strategy document if it doesn't delay the signing off of the strategy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I notice that there is a preface that will be added, which will be written by somebody, which could include that as well. So we can get that link into there, if that helps. Councillor Lation.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Tom, if I may, whether the appendix, I know Appendix B is a revision of the template, and I welcome that. Appendix C is the best EIA guidance I've ever read, and I just wondered, is that our in-house guidance? Is that something that comes kind of off the shelf, or is that something that's been written by the team here?
Firstly, thank you. Secondly, it's in-house guidance, so it will have used other areas, but predominantly it's the guidance we had refreshed, updated, and to make it clearer and easier for people to read, because I think there was a fair amount in it previously. So what we've done is reduced and minimised it, so we focus on the key bits that we need them to consider as part of it. So yeah, it's in-house guidance, so thank you.
Chair, if I could just come back and say I really welcome that, not just because it's plain English and one can read it and understand it, but also because we hear from other councils that EDI doesn't matter, and it does. And for this administration, as my colleague will say, every day of the week it matters a great deal. So we owe big thanks to you for making it so understandable and presenting it in a really clear form. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any other executive members. Can I just look online or in the room? Councillor Rodriguez, you're at the start this time.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, really cool. Just one question for me is around the working towards being an anti-racist organisation. I'm interested, because that's about the organisation, not Somerset County as a whole. I'm interested, and I'm assuming this isn't the case, do we have a racist problem or something? Do you measure that in the organisation? Is there an issue there? I've not seen or experienced any of that in this council, though I have experienced that outside of this council. So that's the question I ask. And how much are we actually going to do as an organisation around that? That will then feed into the communities all around Somerset? And also, what about, I appreciate there's you're going to put forward a work plan. I'm interested around timelines. There's nothing about timeline implementing any of that as well. So just to give us some sort of insight as to how quickly we're going to be putting all of this together.
Thank you for your three-part question. I shall try and cover them all. If I don't, then please let me know. So in relation to are we a racist organisation? No, we are not a racist organisation. What an anti-racist organisation is it's essentially about us committing to take proactive steps in making sure that we are not, and we are weeding out and dealing with any issues, but also proactively dealing with any issues. So it's less of a reactive statement for us, more of a proactive statement around what we're going to do to make sure that we aren't, and to improve and move the dial where we need to make sure we're improving and heading forward. So it's about us proactively looking at it and dealing with it rather than reacting with it. Having said that, what I will say is that we are seeing an increase in the incidents that our staff are receiving within the wider community, and kind of how we respond and reflect in relation to that. So part of this is a response to that as well. And that then leads on to your second point around actually how that fits within the wider community. So I think there's an element of work which hopefully should be within that and will be picked up through the action plan and the work that we do collectively with our community safety colleagues around our role within the wider community and our role around improving understanding within the wider community and what that looks like. So that's then supported by the work that we're currently commissioning through Thrive, which is Somerset Diverse Communities, and that is very much wedded in the what's happening within the communities, how are we supporting, how are we understanding knowledge, how are we sharing, how are we challenging. So this sits alongside other bits of work that we're doing as well. This isn't the totality of it in some way, shape or form. In relation to the last bit around timelines, once we've got the objectives agreed as part of this, the aim will be to firm up some agreed time action plans that we've already got agreed. So there's some stuff that we've kind of agreed in the background we kind of need to get the objectives agreed before we start really working effectively on what those action plans will look like. My hope is always slightly more optimistic than it probably should be around timescales, is that we have something arranged and sorted at the very minimum by September. I would want stuff before then. As a bit of a reassurance and a caveat to that, it will not essentially be that we will be sat waiting for the action plans to be created for work to be done. That work is to some degree already ongoing and there is already stuff that is taking place. Likewise, there are additional actions and work that we are doing as an organisation. So what we've got within the document that's in front of you is our kind of outward facing stuff. What we've also got is a hell of a lot of work that we're doing internally about how we function as an organisation, what that looks like and how we're giving our organisation the structure it needs to be able to work effectively. So yeah, there's other stuff that's happening as well.
Okay, thanks for the question and comprehensive answer as well. Not seeing any further commentary or questions. So we have a recommendation to adopt the proposed equality objectives for Somerset Council 26 to 30 to request directors to identify further actions to support these objectives, agree the EDI strategy and accept and adopt the EIA template and guidance document and agree to receive an annual review of the equality objectives and outcomes. That's proposed by Councillor Frederica Smith-Roberts, seconded by Councillor Thea Burt-Philip. All those in favour, please. All those against? That's clearly carried. Tom, can you extend our thanks to your wonderful team for all their hard work that they do on behalf of the Council and Somerset residents?
Will do, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our business for this morning. And we've got one agenda item extra through this morning, and we are 1 minute over schedule. So thank you very much for your cooperation in achieving that. Thank you. Please, can I have everyone back at the advertised time, which would be 1:40. To today's executive meeting, and hopefully we should conclude the business within the hour. I believe we are slightly ahead of schedule. Let's see if we can keep it that way and get some time back. Who knows? Councillor, so we're on agenda item 11, which is Fair Access Protocol, which is pages 159 to 206 on the agenda pack. And Councillor Heather Shearer to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much. It's the old graveyard slot after lunch, isn't it? I'm not going to make it entertaining. I leave that to our officers to explain it. Fair Access Protocol. I'll just do a quick intro, and then I'll hand over to Jane and Heather. We've been working for the last year to revise our Fair Access Protocol, and we have brought it in front of you earlier in the year, I think, to get your head around it to start with. The Fair Access Protocol, it ensures vulnerable children and those who are struggling to secure a place in schools are allocated a place fairly and quickly. That's its intent. I mentioned vulnerable children there. There are 13 categories of vulnerable children in the process and in the law that surrounds this, if you like, in the statute. But it comes into its own most often for those children who've either been denied a school place because of their challenging behaviour, or they've actually need a school place after they've been excluded from a school. That's the one. They're the things we most often need to bring it into play for. We've been any change to the Fair Access Protocol has to be done in consultation with schools. It is a little overdue anyway, because I think it ran out in 2023, but we have spent time working with the schools to understand to help them understand the bits we think could be done better and to hear what they wanted to be done better. So I think what we've got in the protocol now reflects a lot of the views of the schools as well as ourselves. And we've been doing this for a while. And actually, when the report was drafted, we were still just finishing off the consultation. The consultation is closed. And the wonderful thing now that we've got is that we needed to have obviously a majority of schools supporting our proposals, and perhaps more importantly, that at least that had to include a majority of secondary schools, principally because secondary schools and middle schools rely on this protocol more often than the junior or infant or first schools do. So it was really important that we got the got the kind of collaboration and support from that level of schooling, which we have got now. So at least what you're seeing now is something that the schools have said that they have got support in, and we've done our best to ensure that we've consulted with them. So and there's in the pack that you've got, I'm sure Jane will fill in the bits I've not said, but in the pack you have got some summaries of the changes that have been made. But I'll hand over to Jane in case there's anything, or Heather. This is Jane Wetherill and Heather Good, in case there's anything more I need to be saying about it in introduction.
Thank you. Yes. So the first consultation was in October, and although it was wasn't a no, there was issues raised that the schools wanted further discussions with, particularly our secondary school heads. So we met with the secondary school heads and looked at some of the proposals, and some were really minor. So during that time, Ofsted changed its scorecards and categories, so we had to update to that, and they just wanted a bit more clarity around the school admissions code, around what was constituting challenging behaviour. So we worked really closely with SASH and CEOs and other secondary school heads, and we put the new proposals back in place. One of the bigger ones was that schools were very keen that the equitable share data, which sort of puts a school at what level they are ready to take another child, was made fairer, and that if children left that school, then that equitable data share came off that school, so that it gave a true reflection of the amount of pupils that they were managing through that process. So really pleased to see that we had a reasonable engagement, a fairly good engagement, and the consultation went through. And I think what it has done with us and the conversations we've had with schools is really improved the relationships around that whole FAT process, and has given some clarity and understanding of what the FAT stands for, but also recognising that sometimes schools are struggling a bit, and allows them to have that opportunity. So, for example, if a school does go into a negative category, there is a year from when the report is written to them not having to take a cohort of difficult pupils around that. So it's been a really big positive piece of work, and all the proposals that we put forward were agreed by the schools.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. Are there any comments or questions from executive colleagues? Go on, Sarah.
I have to say this is not a subject that I'm particularly familiar with. I'm just looking at the new proposals and how it's different. Presumably, in a situation like this, you try to get the child into a school as near as possible to where they live. I mean, that must be one of the first considerations, but I mean, not the only one. But is that something you can achieve usually, or does it just depend on the numbers in the school?
See, I'll just come in and then you can give the proper technical answer. I mean, one of the changes was also in the way we've done the kind of panels who listen to and do these access conversations. Because previously, I think we did it in 4 separate places, and therefore you were really confined to what was in that area, whereas all those people on borders, that made it harder. So I think now doing it across 2 halves of the county, I think has actually made the choices a bit better. And the idea was to get children closer to where they should be. The ladies can tell me how often that's actually successful, because you do have to have the right school for the child as well as in the right place.
Yeah, I'll just add that we're choosing the 10 nearest schools to that particular home address, whereas before it was not done in that way. It was done more in just the area. So if it was Taunton, we went to Taunton schools and whatever. So now we're doing the 10 nearest schools that have the equitable share that are ready for those pupils. So, and it's also done in a locality base. So children will be held in their sort of localities where they already know the EPs, they already know the SEND support teams and things like that.
Any other comments or questions from executive members? Not seeing anybody, so we'll go to Francis. Good afternoon, Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do welcome this. I am sure that it is a better way of doing things. Distance is a huge thing. Pushing children to to travel too far doesn't do them or the staff who are trying to teach them and care for them any good. However, there's a bit of tension in the paper that I think will require a bit of care in its implementation. Now, we start on page 167 at 13, health and safety implications. The Fair Access Protocol aims to distribute students who are vulnerable or may exhibit challenging behaviour evenly across schools. 1, that's not about children, that's about schools. But we go to page 169 where the impact assessment is deliberately predominantly considered the impact on children. So that's rather different from the aim that we've said. I'm not saying any of these things are wrong at all. I'm just saying I think they're things that we need to manage. And we're saying that implement a more child-centred approach when identifying a school place. So that's geographic. Well, that's not the only bit that is relevant. And page 193, if I can scoot there quickly enough, we are saying decisions are made on a geographic basis. Again, absolutely understand that there is clear benefit in that, but again, it isn't the only thing. First of all, on a geographic basis doesn't necessarily even stuff up for schools. And secondly, it's on a geographic basis is not about a fair number in each school. And so there's tension there that needs to be looked at. And I think there are a couple of things that not all schools are created equal. We know that. And while we would like it to be the case that all mainstream schools, any mainstream school, can meet the needs of any child who is considered to be suitable for mainstream, some are going to struggle more than others. And I understand the Ofsted stuff, that's right, not only from the school's point of view, but also from the child's point of view. But I think we as a local authority need to be aware that there may need to be consideration of what support needs to be given to schools that may either need to upskill or upskill practice or change the culture and inclusive approach. So I think there's something here for us as a local authority that to make this work with that tension which is inherent in it. It's a bit it's implicit in the paper, but it's not actually spelt out, and I think perhaps it needs some explicit thinking about. And then 6:11, yes, Ofsted, and it's 6:14, the tie break distance. The tie break is distance. I'm worried about the tie break being distance. There may be some good other reason why we wouldn't do that. So I think that's, I understand why it's here in the protocol, and I understand this is what you're going to approve. But I think there's some work to be done to make sure that's right. And the last bit, and I really would welcome a response today and any other, and some thinking about it. Page 175. This is a bit that does slightly worry me. Furthermore, there are 72 children who were permanently excluded with SEN support provided. Some would have been undergoing an EHC needs assessment, which will result or not in an EHCP being issued. So if it's issued, they wouldn't be placed in a school in accordance with the Fair Access Protocol. The sentence that worries me, shook me rigid, was we do not have the data to identify how many of these 72 children were undergoing an EHC needs assessment. What? I think that was a particular point that really worried me. But the other one is the general one about the tension between the needs of children and the needs of schools, and how we're going to support that.
Okay, Heather first, then Jane or Heather.
Yeah. So I just want to reassure whilst this is a protocol, we are flexible within that, and we have a school in crisis that hasn't had their Ofsted report published yet. It's in significant crisis. This is a head teacher's decision. So the head teachers sit there and we look at that. The head teachers make the decision. And when we know that there is a school in their community that's in crisis, those head teachers will acknowledge that, support that, and work around that. And we can help support that as well. For children that need additional support, we use our virtual school, we use our inclusion teams, FIS, education, to support those as part of a package alongside a transition package with the PRU. So these children aren't just sort of thrown back out into that area. So I appreciate that concern and that worry. We are supporting them. I've been chairing FAP since October, and I've seen a real change. There's still some work to do, but I am seeing a real change in how the schools talk to each other, help each other out, and negotiate, and say actually that whilst that might be the school that's identified, we can see why that might not be the right one. So yeah.
I was going to say something. I'm chuffed now because I was going to say something very similar in terms of you need to have a protocol, but that has to sit behind, underneath, and support, if you like, the conversation and the relational things that happen in one of these FAP panels, and we have to rely on those as much as possible. And I think that's and I think that there's inherently a tension. There are inherent tensions in the system because the schools will want to ensure it's fair from their children's point of view, but also from their point of view, that they don't take more than their fair share because they've got a good reputation or because they're willing or whatever. But having said that, so we have to make that as fair as possible. But it's not just, oh well, it's not your turn, it's their turn, the child's going there, and and that's always going to be a trick. The bit that you picked up that made your eyebrows go up, made my eyebrows go up too. I've asked the question about that, and forgive me, I haven't got the answer to bring here today, but I will have that answer because I was thinking that can't quite be right, or if it isn't right, we must find a way of it not being right. But I've asked the question, but I haven't got the answer for it yet, and that's my fault. I will make sure that we write back to you on that one. But I think the overall thing seems to me to be the best support that we can do. We might change it again in a couple of years' time when it's not fixed in stone. But I think it seems to be the best support that we can for those times when we don't all agree in the room. I think that's the thing. Thank you.
Yeah, please do.
I think the previous one didn't work because it wasn't fit for purpose, but also it was about relationships with schools and the LA. And now that we have those relationships with schools, they are listening, the FAP's well managed and chaired. There's challenge in them, which is right, and rightly so, there should be challenge. But I think because there is an understanding and the intelligence is there, we know our schools really, really well now, and we know what's the best fit for these children. And I think, we will run with this and then we will review it. We will be constantly reviewing it and getting feedback from schools about how it's going. Because what we don't want to do is we'll run with it. We think it's fair. The schools think it's fair. But if over time we think it's not fit for purpose, then we would come back to it.
Okay, Frances, I will allow you to come back because I don't expect anybody else will want to.
Very briefly to say thank you very much. All of that is very helpful. Yeah, if we know 72 individual children, we can certainly find out whether there's an EHC assessment going on. And thank you. I look forward. I'm glad we both noticed that one. And yes, absolutely, it's all about relationships and communication. And I'd just say that communication is a two-way street.
Yeah, and I'm reassured that the traffic flow in that two-way street is improving. It may not be perfect. But my sense of that relationship, both between the local authority and schools, and between schools in different trusts, as well, is improving as well, which is really important that we get a collaborative education system, instead of a one where trust is sadly missing. Okay, not seeing anybody else wishing to comment or question on this, so it remains for me to say thank you to Jane and Heather and all involved with this bringing this forwards. And we have a very simple recommendation that we approve the FAP in Appendix 1, which is proposed by Councillor Shearer and seconded by Councillor Wakefield. All those in favour, please. All those against? That's clearly carried. Thank you very much for all the hard work that's taken place behind this. Which moves us on to agenda item 12, which is managing unreasonable customer behaviour and cautionary contracts policy, and Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts to introduce.
Thank you, Bill. So this report is our cyclical review of our unreasonable customer behaviour policy. This is an important piece of work that ensures we continue to offer fair, accessible and high quality services to the public, whilst also safeguarding the well-being of our staff and councillors. We all know that the vast majority of our residents engage with the council respectfully, often in challenging personal circumstances. But there are occasions where behaviour can become unacceptable or place unreasonable demands on our services. This policy provides a clear, proportionate framework for managing those situations, ensuring consistency across the whole council. Our aim today is simply to consider how this updated approach supports both good customer service and a safe working environment, and to ensure it reflects the values and expectations of Somerset Council.
Okay, and hand over to Rebecca to introduce the report.
As Councillor said, it is the cyclical update. It was delayed, unfortunately, because we were expecting to be able to update it with some policy adjustments which will be required for the new cautionary contacts register, which is being developed by Health and Safety, but that's a little bit behind schedule. So rather than delay further, we've decided to go with an interim update at this stage, with an expectation that it will be looked at again within the next year. The changes that we've proposed are primarily administrative changes. So there was some duplication in the wording of the policy and some feedback that some of that was unclear. So we've tried to clear that up and go with a more plain English approach. We've consulted with the service areas that regularly, not so regularly, but generally have to refer to this policy and use this policy, and sought feedback on how it's worked for staff and how effective it has been in managing behaviours. It recommends that the decision-making appeals process remains largely the same, but we have recommended the inclusion of more robust reporting, so inclusion in the annual report of anonymised data, including the circumstances, frequency, etc., of when the the policy has been used, and also a subsequent recommendation that we make a monthly report to the portfolio holder for customers, again anonymised on the basis of how often the policy has been used and under what circumstances, so that any concerns about the application of the policy can kind of be called in and discussed further.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I believe this had some pretty good debate at scrutiny. So, Councillor Smith-Roberts, could you just highlight where we've amended and where we maybe haven't amended the policies from scrutiny? Oh, Councillor Pugsley, I saw you briefly turn up.
I have been listening intently to the discussions all day, Mr. Chairman.
My apologies. I was misled that you were working all day and wouldn't be available. So my sincere apologies. And I would just be mesmerised by your bookshelf, if I may be. Please do give us the feedback that scrutiny gave us, and then I'll hand over to Smith-Roberts to finish that.
Thank you, Leader. And I do welcome this opportunity just to make a couple of points in relation to what scrutiny, after a very long and full debate, felt, I think, very strongly and unanimously. We recognise that this is the latest iteration of an existing policy, and that it is due to be further revised to include policies relating to the new cautionary contacts register. However, scrutiny resources members were concerned about aspects of the existing policy and that this opportunity to address them should be taken now. In scrutiny's view, there is a muddle in the policy between that which is deemed unreasonable through persistence and that which is clearly unacceptable, abusive and possibly violent. We question whether it is right that one umbrella framework should cover both, and if it must, then there should be a clearer distinction made between them. The language at the moment, in our view, is unclear and imprecise. Just as one person's guerrilla is another's freedom fighter, so someone's nuisance correspondent is another's relentless seeker after truth. The policy as currently existing places huge pressures on officers to make subjective judgments about where one tips into the other. The introduction to the policy states at its very first bullet point that we seek to put the customer at the heart of all we do. Members are the customer's champions. That is what we're elected to be. In the interest of transparency, and to fairly apportion the burden so it does not fall wholly on officers, scrutiny welcomes the proposal for anonymised monthly reporting to lead members, but it does believe that there should be member input into the final review stage so that the process is demonstrably owned by both officers and members. Members of scrutiny, as I say, unanimously supported these views. You will have had sight, I hope, of the full scrutiny resolutions and the clear recommendations to your executive, which I will repeat, that further refinement of the policy is required to better clarify and separate unacceptable and abusive behaviours from unreasonable, persistent behaviours, and to establish a mechanism for member involvement at the final appeal stage for dealing with a member of the public under the policy. So that, as I say, Mr. Chairman, was the outcome of, I hope, a reasonable but very much engaged scrutiny debate, which was attended by a number of the members in the room with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the feedback, and please pass on our thanks to your committee for their deliberations on this important matter. So I will once again go back to Councillor Smith-Roberts and ask her for a response to those scrutiny recommendations, please.
Thank you, Bill. Firstly, apologies that I couldn't be at that scrutiny. I was in Marrakesh, but I'm really grateful for the work I think Scott has done and the scrutiny around the report that we've got in front of us, because it makes it easy from my point of view to follow some of those recommendations that scrutiny has raised. So there are some points that we just need to note, and I don't know whether these will go into the minutes or whether we need to read, they'll go into the minutes, Alan, so that it makes sense what I'm answering here. So we will note what scrutiny have said in relation to the first bullet points. In relation to the second bullet points, it is also noted and understood that the intention and application of the policy is not intended to prevent access to information by the public. And we have got some suggested amendments to the wordings for 3 of the bullet points, so that we can make that clearer. When it comes to the third bullet point, it is again noted and it's underpinned by the suggested additions that has been put here in our response above, and the need for the services to demonstrate that the queries have had full and appropriate responses. So this relates to the fact that actually we need to ensure that when residents ask us questions, we give full responses, because if people keep coming back because they haven't had a response, that would be unfair to call them persistent if we haven't answered their full questions. So in relation to the next bullet point regarding how we look to manage these situations, our officer view, and I'm comfortable with this review, but I'll open it up to debate for constructive discussion, is that by doing the amendments that we are proposing where the lead member sees on a monthly basis, we don't feel the need to bring in an appeal panel at the moment. So the process would be that the initial decision is always reviewed by 2 managers, one based in the service and another from customer experience, usually the head of service. Then we have the current appeal process, which is that it goes to the monitoring officer or a deputy if needed. The customer can continue to retain the right to raise a formal complaint if they believe that the decision demonstrates an unfair bias. There is an opportunity within that process to also escalate the matter to the local government and social care ombudsman if dissatisfied with our outcome. And we also have an HR process available in the event of a maladministration or misconduct at officer level. So then when it comes to the final bullet point, ultimately, the policies, we've noted it, but the policy is designed to support staff well-being, which can be adversely affected by unreasonable customer behaviour. This applies to both persistence, but also to abusive and aggressive behaviours. It is recognised and accepted that the judgment of persistence needs to be fair and reasonable and cannot be used to avoid being responsive and transparent. There are some checks and balances here which provide reassurance. Services will be asked to demonstrate that they have responded appropriately to correspondence prior to any decision. In all cases, the decision will seek to ensure that at least one suitable channel of communication will remain available to that customer. It may be a single point of contact, a specific method or frequency. Application of the policy does not again affect the customer's rights to statutory process, such as seeking information through FOIs, EIRs, or engaging with democratic processes or raising formal complaints. I think for me, if I give my personal view onto something that was said in relation to from Councillor Pugsley from a scrutiny point of view, for me, I want to say that sometimes persistence can have just as much negative impact on people as much as being sworn at or having racial abuse thrown to them. If you see persistently the same questions being raised or the same names in your inbox, that can have an impact on you. And I've seen that happen to other councillors in other situations. So I do think for us that this policy allows us to protect the welfare of our staff and councillors in how we engage with our residents. I think for me personally, we are reviewing this in probably 6 to 12 months' time when that extra legislation needs to come in. That will allow us to see how this living, breathing document works and how we look to apply this. And actually the ability for me as the lead member looking at how so our staff are treated when it comes to unreasonable behaviour, it will shine a light and that will be anonymised, and also the ability to push back if I feel that that decision hasn't been made correctly. And again, scrutiny can call this back in when they want to see how that process is made. For me, we must protect people's health and well-being.
understand you mentioned that this policy will come back for a review because of changes in legislation. Am I able to understand the timescale for that, please?
Yeah, it's not legislation as such. It's a project that Health and Safety are leading on, which is called a cautionary contacts register, and it sort of overlaps with that. The purpose of that piece of work is that we are seeing things like hazardous premises that people are visiting. So somebody might go and there might be a dangerous dog, or there might be, a violent incident occurred. So that they're creating a sort of an online tool to manage known risks to staff, and obviously this overlaps a little bit. I understand that it will be this year that they aim to go live with that. They had intended to by March, but it's been delayed. So it's a little out of my hands in terms of timescale, but I'm understanding it should be this calendar year.
So 1st of April, aren't we? So we are looking in the next 8-9 months that we will see that coming back for a review. Okay, I've got Councillor Rigby and then Councillor Elijah.
Thank you, Bill. I'd like to recommend that we postpone consideration of this item. I've had no indication despite repeated requests, about how we intended to deal with scrutiny's recommendations today until 4 minutes before the meeting started. And I've still seen nothing in writing. This doesn't, in my view, treat scrutiny's views, which includes our own backbenchers, with sufficient respect. And I'd like to push consideration of this item back to May to give the executive an opportunity to discuss without haste how we treat the scrutiny recommendations. If the item isn't to be postponed, I'd like to speak substantively on the issue, please.
Thank you. So I've got a request that we push this back. I've got Liz to speak, so I'm going to I'll ask Liz to speak, and then I'll ask you to respond to that request.
Okay, so if I may, through you, Chair, ask colleague Federica, on the penultimate paragraph under number 3, so where it says it ends, the portfolio holder will request a full review. So if this were to be approved this afternoon, and we would know that it will be coming back with the cautionary contacts part of the policy at a later date, what would that mean in the meantime if you as portfolio holder were not satisfied? So in the event of any queries or concerns regarding the application of the policy and or restrictions imposed, the portfolio holder will request a full review. So does that mean that it is to the portfolio holder to have the concerns? And then if the portfolio holder requested a full review, how might that full review look? How might it be undertaken? Are you able to give us some guidance on that, please?
My understanding, and I'll bring in Alan and Rebecca here, is that I will meet monthly with Rebecca and to go through anyone who has been designated under this policy, again anonymised, and then I can say, actually, from the information I've been given, I'm not happy that we've taken this stance. Can you go away and get more information, or can we full review this? And then Rebecca can take that forward with the service and either get more information or look to then review that decision. I don't know, Rebecca, if you want to add more to that.
Yes, so part of the process of pursuing a designation of unreasonable behaviour is that I would ask as the first step for the service manager who's experiencing the problem to complete an application from that. And in the application form, I would expect the service manager to describe the behaviours, the frequency, how it's impacting staff, all of those sorts of things. We also look at any known vulnerabilities that the customer might have, so particular disabilities or situations that might be exacerbating behaviour. So I'd collect all of that data. I would then usually analyse that. So part of that would be, where there's persistence, part of it would be, let's pull together a record of all the questions and queries that the customer has answered, and then you evidence to me how those have been responded to, or if they haven't been responded to, that you have explained to the customer why that is, or provided a date for when a response will be available. So collect all that evidence together before the decision's made. So I think if Councillor Smith-Roberts was unhappy about any decisions based on the monthly report, then the next step would be for me to share that full workings in detail about, what the situation was, what the evidence shows to support it, and why the decision was reached. And then obviously other options that we could have come to if that might have been appropriate, and why we didn't.
I just need to go on one more step, if I may. So if the portfolio holder at that point was still not satisfied that the situation had been dealt with in a way that he or she, in this case, felt was fair and reasonable, what then would be open to the portfolio holder? This might be something for the monitoring officer, perhaps. What would then be open to the portfolio to take it a further stage?
So in this instance, that matter would then be referred to the deputy monitoring officers or the monitoring officer to review. That would then be a full consideration of the issue. So effectively that would remove, in this case, Rebecca from that consideration and the service, and it would be an entirely independent review of all of the information and documentation in making that view. If there was any conflict with any of the deputy monitoring officers or the monitoring officer himself, then we would assign somebody, and that team is built in a way. There are a number of representatives, including an independent member of staff that is able to review those matters should they need to do so. They would report that back to the portfolio holder, again, independently, in order to make sure that that was quite clear. We'd also remind the customer of the escalation routes that were available, so things like local government ombudsman, but also the complaints process if they felt either a member of staff or the process hadn't been followed appropriately.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Smith-Roberts, we've got a suggestion from Councillor Rigby to delay this because of the late response to the scrutiny recommendations. We understand the reasons of annual leave and so on made that tricksy. Would you like to respond to that?
I'd rather hear the debate from others around the table, but I also know that we've been in this situation before in relation to, I think, budget. We had scrutiny come quite close to full council. So from my point of view, I've had meetings both with Alan and yourself, Bill, to discuss this. And whilst I was away not listening to scrutiny, it's a really clear paper, and I'm comfortable with the information that we have in front of us and what Alan has just said as to that process and that kind of route that the lead member can take, because ultimately that's almost like the appeal that a member of the public could take if they were designated it. So it's asking for another review to check that this has happened. So I'm comfortable with where we are and open it up for other members to give their view.
Okay, if we don't pass this today, is there any risk associated with delaying the decision?
Are we not carrying on as we are, apart from that actually the lead member wouldn't be looking at any designations of unreasonable behaviour, so it would carry on as the process is today?
So my understanding then is if we pass this today, we are adding in an additional safeguard, and then we can consider adding in further safeguards when the policy comes back for review, once we have and I wrote the words down and I can't find them, cautionary contact register. My apologies, I did write it down somewhere and I can't find it now. Okay, so I'm just trying to clarify in my mind what a two-stage approach to this looks like. I'm very mindful of the feedback of scrutiny. I want to respect that. I'm also aware that that we need to, if we add in extra layers of democratic assurance now, it doesn't stop us adding further layers of democratic assurance later on down the line. Okay, I just want to take some advice also, monitoring officer, on the fact that we've had late information here, and does that impact our decision making that we've not had that in writing?
So, Chair, you had the recommendations published by scrutiny, so they were published on Friday last week. In terms of the response to that, that's a matter that you've dealt with previously in other matters in the meetings and heard that debate and discussion. If there are matters that you wish to consider following scrutiny, then you've got the ability to do that in the debate. There's nothing stopping any of that conversation. And again, there is previous examples where you've done exactly that, particularly things like budget, for example, where you've considered matters following scrutiny debate and brought them straight into this meeting for consideration. If you wished to defer the matter today, you'd need to effectively, I think technically it's an adjournment, you'd need to have effectively a proposal and a seconder and vote on that adjournment in order to kind of postpone the item for consideration today, and then move it to a future agenda item.
Okay, so we've got a proposal to adjourn. I would need a seconder. I can see Councillor Wilkins twitching here. Can you?
I do have a question before we go down this route, and if we were to implement the scrutiny suggestions in full and add the extra layers directly in, I'm trying to understand the impact of that. How many people would fall into those extra layers? How much time would this add to both members and officers? I'm sort of not understanding. It's probably very simple, but I'm not quite there yet.
Okay, can anyone help?
I think we heard one case.
I believe it's one case since vesting day.
Yeah, one case.
Is that correct? Yeah. Councillor Pugsley, you have appeared like a wise owl in front of us.
I don't know about that.
Please carry on.
Can I just say that I don't think scrutiny was actually suggesting adding an extra layer. I think it was suggesting that members should be involved in an existing process. And I think that's the key part of it. We're very anxious to make sure that officers are not overburdened, that we're not adding to their stresses, we're not adding to their difficulties, but that members are seen to be part of the process very transparently. And that was really the point that is being made in the second recommendation from scrutiny.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Pugsley. Federica and then Mike.
So thank you, Councillor Pugsley, for that clarification. So actually by adding the lead member in there, that would then seek to include democratic oversight.
Thanks, Leader. If it helps, in the alternative, I'm happy to withdraw my proposal on the basis that we implement the full recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee. But if that finds favour with my colleagues, I'm happy to withdraw the deferral. My only purpose really is that we get to properly consider it. I've not seen anything until now about how we're going to deal with the scrutiny recommendations. I think they're sensible. We looked at them last week and I think they were widely considered to be sensible. If we are going to implement them in full, I'll withdraw the deferral proposal.
Okay, so there's an alternative suggestion of proposing the full scrutiny recommendations. Councillor Wakefield, Sarah.
Yep, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at the meeting last week either, as I was also on leave. However, it seems to me that we're getting this in a bit of a muddle. These inquiries of the council are made to officers about process, and about policy decisions they're made to councillors. Now, are we talking about process or are we talking about policy decisions? Because you can ask your councillor and you can ask it at a public meeting, or you can ask them directly if you don't like the policies that we are implementing as a council. But if you don't like the process, or you've got a question about process, it goes to officers. And I think officers should be determinants ultimately through our hierarchy of whether we've done the process properly or not. And I do not think that members would be in a good position to answer on questions of process, actually. So I don't see why we would undermine the authority of the officers in talking about process, because there is a complaints procedure, there is the ombudsman if you don't like what you hear. And I'd be interested to know, because I mean, we've said we've had one complaint that may have escalated in this way. So we are creating a policy for one person or one situation. And I don't agree with that either. I think that it might be useful to know a bit more about how many people there are who write over and over again asking questions, because it is something, if you get that as a councillor, it's extremely difficult to deal with, other than to say, I'm not going to answer your question because you've asked me so many times before, or I refer you to the answer I gave last week, whatever it happens to be. So I just want to be clear that we are talking about process rather than policy. I think if people want to claim that our policies are wrong, then they've got a democratic way of doing that. There are ways through the committees, and they can do it in the ballot box as well when the opportunity comes around. But if it's about process, I think that is a matter for the council. I just think we're conflating the two here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rigby, did you want to come back to, or did you have your bite of the cherry?
It depends on whether we're planning to accept the recommendations or not. So if we're not going to do that, I've
still got people waiting to contribute to the debate who haven't before.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to check over.
Yeah, if we don't accept the recommendations or defer it, there's more I'd like to say, but I can save that for everyone's health.
Heather.
Thank you. I just want to come in off the back of what Sarah was saying, because that does seem to me to be the issue. It is about what we're trying to protect and what we're trying to negotiate our way through in the policy, and it must be about processes. It's not about policy per se, which is a political matter. And I think, and you said Sarah, that how awful it is, or not awful, but it can be difficult when somebody asks you questions and questions. We have, as councillors, sometimes we shouldn't do it, but at least we can choose not to respond to somebody, but officers can't in the same way, or they can't easily. So there is that issue about it, and I'm not saying that they should not respond, and I'm saying and it's, we've got to be very careful about how it's applied. And I do like that extra, I don't want to be an extra layer for Mr. Pugsley, but for Councillor Pugsley, but I think to actually have that oversight from a lead member from the customer side, and then also to know that behind that is the monitoring officer and the monitoring officers, because there are a number of them, who can get that kind of independent view. So I think for me, I'm quite kind of persuaded by Sarah's point about policy rather than process rather than policy, and that's an officer's job rather than our job. All kinds of people can be swayed for all kinds of reasons, but I think the officer with a good policy would make life easier. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wish to contribute at this stage in the debate? In which case, yes, Councillor Lysham.
I'm just asking myself two questions. Is what's in front of us today an improvement on what we've got already? Yes or no? And then if we were to approve this today, does that give us an opportunity then to work on it further before it comes back to us with the cautionary contacts? Yes or no? So I'm just going yes or no on those two. And unless somebody can convince me differently, I think that's where I am. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to other members now, and we will come back further to the debate. I know that members are pondering at the moment, I think is where we are. So I've got Councillor Hobhouse, Councillor Wren and Councillor Rodriguez indicated. So Councillor Hobhouse first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I want to agree with everything Stephen Pugsley has said today. I was vice chairing the scrutiny committee where this was discussed. My problem with the existing idea and ideas is that there is no route of appeal which does not have somebody who has skin in the game. And the one thing I've always understood about an appeal process is that you have to have somebody looking at it completely and utterly impartially. And we have a system in existence for when members have got a problem or officers have got a problem, where in both cases there is a members panel who act as, for want of a better word, the judge and the jury. And this is something that we need to look at if we're going to have any sort of appeal process. The fundamental question that really concerns me is that, from what I understand, this is the first person who has been named under this policy in 3 years. And yet we are fighting over a very small amendment to make a final appeal system of people who are not involved in the problems at any stage prior to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hobhouse. Councillor Wren.
Thank you, Leader. Can you see me? Yes, here I am. Yes, I mean, I've been listening to this with interest. I haven't been immersed in the detail of the persistent policy or persistence policy, but I have been aware of it. I have been contacted over it in the past. I think one of the things that's beginning to bother me, which has emerged out of the debate, is the reliance on the fallback on the complaints procedure. I, in my capacity as chair of the Community Scrutiny Committee, have had 1 or 2 complaints about the complaints procedure and how it operates. And I did seek to bring it to the committee to have a look at it and to be told that, oh no, it's not your committee, it's Constitution and Government, not Constitution and Government, it's Councillor Pugsley's committee. So I needed to have a word with Councillor Pugsley, and before I've had the chance to do that, we find ourselves here today. So I will be talking to Stephen Pugsley about the complaints procedure and the perceived deficiencies it has, particularly in relation to shutting down complaints fairly quickly, or prematurely, shall we say. Because I think if you're going to rely on that as a fallback position to deal with these kind of instances, then I think we need to make sure that that is robust as well. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wren. Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's really positive that scrutiny's comments are being very robustly heard and a strong position being taken about what they're saying, which is and the time in which you've had to consider those, which isn't sometimes always the case. Not dig, but it's quite interesting to see. The only question I would have or comment, and it's probably more to Alan Jones, is around declarations of interest. I'm only wondering if a member of the executive has had a relationship or something like that with any customers who may or may not have been part of a process that we're discussing, should that be declared at the executive for transparency, so we know where everyone's arguments may or may not be coming from?
It's a difficult point to kind of provide detailed advice on, because it's not something that I would ordinarily be cited on. I think if members feel that they are in any way conflicted as part of the debate, it's up to them to declare that. If it was found at a future point, then that would be clearly a matter for further consideration and potentially investigation. But that's not a matter that I would advise on. That is part of that standard viewpoint that you as members, all members, would have to consider prior to engaging in a conversation or a debate on a matter, if you felt you were conflicted in any way, shape or form. I think one of the issues that it leads to is the strong advice from officers around ensuring that the entirety of this process, notwithstanding the policy itself, should sit with the officer domain in order to ensure there is no risk of politicisation of the process, and ensuring that the application of that is robust and the challenge in that is robust. Clearly, there are a number of safeguards which both Rebecca and I have set out, which is both the local government ombudsman, the complaints process, both in terms of officer conduct if necessary, but ultimately as well the safeguard around ensuring that colleagues aren't involved in the process, particularly Rebecca in the first line of defence, and ultimately the deputy monitoring officers or monitoring officers having the ability then to be independent of the view. And we do regularly consider cases of persistence, for example, and regularly push back to services to say, I'm very sorry, but it's quite clear in these matters, we can still see areas of the responses that you could reasonably respond to, and the policy will not be applied. And that's a regular, informal dialogue that occurs with many services across the organisation. Chair.
Hey, Federica.
I just thought it'd be useful, maybe, sorry, Alan, to keep you talking, is around one of the councillors in the questions asked about the fact that officers have skin in the game, I think was the phrase used. It would be good to understand how the monitoring officer and deputy monitoring officers, how that impartiality would work, because I think that it needs to be very clear that actually whoever takes on that review actually is impartial. They don't have skin in the game.
Through you, Chair. So in those instances, the monitoring officer, myself, and my colleagues, the deputy monitoring officers, meet regularly to review all sorts of cases, all sorts of issues, and this would be one of them. And we consider it as as part of that conversation whether there are any conflicts of interest in terms of its application or who is best placed to review that. And at all instances, that is not a simple one-way conversation. Me describing to my deputies how they need to conduct themselves. Moreover, that's a very robust and challenging conversation with the head of legal, with the head of democratic and governance services, with our deputy monitoring officer as well, that investigates individual complaints. And at all instances, that's a very two-way dialogue in order to ensure that that independence is made clear, and that's robust in order to ensure that there aren't any risks of conflicts of interest. So at every point, reviewing any type of complaint or issue, and this would be one of them, we would ensure that there is a very clear assessment done of is there any conflict of interest and is there any need to remove one of us through that process.
Could I ask, Chair, we often talk about benchmarking in other ways with other councils, and I wonder if there's anything we can ask about how other councils deal with a policy like this, and whether there's anything we can learn from any of our neighbouring councils, please.
Chair, if I may, so as you can imagine, we do consider and benchmark ourselves, and I'm sure Rebecca will come in on this as well. We do benchmark ourselves, so looking at our near neighbours, it reflects very much the process and practice that you're seeing in front of you. And in fact, actually, we go a step further in the sense that we do have that referral to the portfolio holder now being put in. That's not something that's ordinarily done by most councils our size. And again, the reason being is that making sure that we go through that officer-led process, because it's the application of the policy rather than the redebate or litigating again the policy through each individual case. So we're very much in line with our peer councils, but Rebecca's probably better suited to talk about that one.
Yeah, just one additional point to that, to say that the policy that we now have was actually co-created through the Southwest Complaints Network. So we have a network of complaints teams and managers that meet. So going down from Cornwall up to Gloucester, I think, and across to Wiltshire, etc. My geography is not good, so but it's all of those sort of Southwest councils, and we co-created the policy that we have now some years ago. So we were all operating under the same policy over the years. I'm sure there's been tweaks and balances, but it's largely the same.
Let me just clarify if I can. So if we were to approve what's in front of us this afternoon, including the portfolio holder, that would take us further than other councils in the Southwest. Is that correct?
Yes, as I understand it, generally what we do if we do make changes to any of our policies relating to complaints is that when we have our regular meetings, we update. So some have made minor changes to their policies along the way, but nothing that comes to mind that's wildly different to what we currently have in place now.
Thank you, colleagues. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating, and I'm very mindful that the suggestion that one person's unreasonable persistence can be somebody else's tenacity and fervour to be able to seek an outcome that they're looking for. And certainly I've listened with great interest to Councillor Pugsley and Councillor Hobhouse and Councillor Wren and Councillor Rodriguez, as well as colleagues on the executive. I'm very aware that if we don't pass something now, then we don't have any member oversight in the immediate aftermath of this, but also very mindful that we have had some very good consideration of scrutiny, and we've not had the time to give that due consideration as well. So I'm going to suggest that we have an amendment to the recommendation, which is to sign off the revised policy with a request that this policy return to the executive after full consideration of the scrutiny recommendations and the cautionary contacts policy. Did I get that right? Okay. Which would then give us that opportunity to give further consideration to the scrutiny recommendations, which takes on board the points that have been made, but at the same time does mean that we establish a little bit more member oversight than we currently have. This is a living document. This isn't we're not carving anything in tablets of stone today. I want to give this further consideration. I don't want to be rushed into either accepting it or not accepting it, but I think what Councillor Frederica Smith-Roberts is proposing is an improvement on where we are, and if we can get it even better afterwards, then I would be even more delighted. Councillor Wilkins.
I'm happy to second that proposal on the proviso that we do set a date when we come back and discuss this. I'm not happy that this would be seen to go into the long grass.
Far from it, Simon. I think we've had an assurance that the cautionary conduct policy will be with us sometime in this calendar year. If not, and if we can get a timeline on that, that would be grand. And if we need to separate that out into two steps rather than one giant leap for Somerset Council, then we'll do that if necessary. Councillor Rigby.
Thanks, Councillor Robinson. Thanks for stepping in that direction. I think that's helpful. What I still don't understand yet is what the objection to what scrutiny have proposed is. I can't see any problem with it, and we're talking about maybe moving to accept that at some future point. Just accept it now. I don't understand where the objection to it comes from. It seems entirely sensible. I think they carefully considered it, come to a view, and I think I've yet to hear anything today to counter why we shouldn't have that extra process. Well, it's not an extra process, as Councillor Pugsley has said, but it's about involving members in that final appeal process. I think if we look at the one case that we're talking about, in that instance,
to be clear, we're not talking about a case. We're talking about
we have done, but when this has been used in the past, we've had the customer experience manager make the designation and then write the responses for each of the appeal stages. I mean, that doesn't work. I mean, that's like the planning committee being asked to deal with an appeal against their refusal of an application. So that there are some issues here, and I think having that final member input, as scrutiny have recommended, is a really sensible and good idea. I haven't heard any reason why we shouldn't do it today.
And I wouldn't rule that out. And I think, but I just want to give it a little bit more consideration. I'm very aware that Councillor Smith-Roberts was on annual leave when it was before scrutiny, as was I, as were other members of the executive. And I think that we need to have that opportunity to go back over, seek advice from our officers and our legal team around how this might pan out, and see if any other councils have a similar arrangement and understand what the drawbacks of that might be. I've heard various concerns, which I don't really want to go into at this stage. I just want to have that opportunity to explore them a little bit further offline, taking into account other people's circumstances.
Yeah, I support your suggestion, Chair, in response to my colleague on the other side of the room over there. I was at the scrutiny committee. I listened to the debate. I welcome the consideration that scrutiny gave it and the recommendations they made. In answer to the question of why we can't just accept them, I would accept them, but they are not a detailed set of amendments to the policy. So even if we accept them in principle, we'll still have to come back with a revised policy. And the difference between what you are saying, Chair, and what Councillor Rigby is saying is, you could just about get a cigarette paper between it. I'm perfectly happy with your proposal. I welcome the scrutiny comments and consideration, and I look forward to seeing a revised policy which takes those on board coming to us in the next few months.
Okay, I think we've reached a point where I've got an amended proposal from the chair. Does that require a seconder under our constitution? I can't remember whether resolutions for the chair require a seconder under our constitution. I didn't write it. Theo, you wrote it, didn't you?
I think, Chair, what we've got is in terms of a request from executive in terms of the timescale to bring it back in relation to that. So rather than a change to the recommendations per se, you've effectively got a position where you were requesting officers to come back on a this calendar year timescale, and we can probably take that away in terms of more precision for you. But the message has been loudly heard, so we can come back with a timescale, but you don't need to amend those recommendations. Effectively, it becomes an additional element.
I would like it to be an amendment. I think that, given the debate that we've had and the debate at scrutiny, I think we need to have that as a record that we've acknowledged that scrutiny debate.
And you can do exactly that, Chair, if you wish. There's no requirement to do so, but you can absolutely do that to make it watertight.
Councillor Wilkins, you've indicated that you'd be happy to second that. Okay, so we've got a proposal and a seconder.
Bill, sorry.
Oh,
Not out of the debate. Just wanted to know, what is the actual recommendation now? I'm just a bit confused what it is. Because there's one line, there's 5 words in the recommendation, so I'm trying to understand what it is.
Okay, so to sign off the revised policy with the request that this policy return to executive after full consideration of the scrutiny recommendations and the continuing contacts policy. Cautionary. I can't read my own handwriting, apparently. There we go. Okay, so that is proposed and seconded. Are there any amendments to that proposal?
I would like us to add to that we consult with other councils to understand their policies at this time too. That did sound as if it would be eminently possible.
Okay, I've added consulting with other councils. Are you happy with that amendment? Oh, please no.
Yeah, no, I am, but I'm very conscious that we get on with it.
Yeah,
you know, we need to get on with this, so I don't want that to drag out this process in any way.
I don't believe it will. I think it's a short bit of desktop research, so I think we just need to make sure that if any other councils have tried this route and it has had advantages or disadvantages, I'd like to understand them. It's kind of a look before you leap approach, if you get what I mean. Yeah. Okay. And it might also help other people. Okay, so we've got a seconder then. Okay, those in favour of that recommendation as revised? And those against? Okay, and abstentions? Okay, so we have a final recommendation proposed and seconded, so we move on to agenda item 13. So just to thank Rebecca and your team for all the hard work that's gone into this and for your engagement with scrutiny as well. Thank you. So item 13 is the creation of a shareholder executive subcommittee. Somerset Council, we own or have interest in a number of companies, some of which, well, I think most of which we've inherited from our predecessor district councils, but not exclusively. They manage assets, they support regeneration and investment across Somerset. As a shareholder, the council does have an important responsibility to make sure its companies are well run and financially sound and delivering what the council expects of them. The role is different from running the companies day to day. That's the responsibility of the company boards and the directors. But good governance is about getting the balance right, providing clear democratic oversight and accountability without interfering in operational management. Following local government reorganisation, the council's reviewed how it exercises its shareholder role, and that review identified a need to make existing arrangements clearer and more consistent so that councillors, officers and company directors all understand who is responsible for what, how decisions are made and how performance and risk are monitored. This report proposes two related outcomes, and first of all, the adoption of a company governance protocol, and two, the creation of a new shareholder executive subcommittee. And together, these provide a clear and transparent route for the council to exercise its shareholder responsibilities, strengthen oversight of its companies and protect the council's interests as stewards of public funds. And the proposals reflect recognised good practice across local government and will help ensure that Somerset Council continues to manage its companies in a lawful, transparent and accountable way while supporting them to succeed against their agreed objectives. And I'll now invite our monitoring officer, head of democratic and governance services and head of legal services. It's like a trio of experts here to add any further specific points as we debate these proposals. And hand over to Scott first of all. Scott. Thank you very much, Mr. Waldridge.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose just to highlight firstly an apology to members in the sense that you'll note that when we published the report last week with the agenda, we did highlight in the report that we were still completing a company's house check. Many of you will then appreciate that yesterday we published a supplement, which is an updated version of this report. Hopefully you'll appreciate that the supplement does specifically identify in both the cover report and the protocol in very clear red letters exactly what changes have been made. But again, we just wanted to make sure we got the most accurate position before you today. Again, just to reference, this isn't new in terms of the approach that we're recommending. Much of this follows both national guidance, but particular guidance that's been developed through the lawyers in local government and SIPFA, particularly to guide councils where they have either wholly or partially owned companies. Now, technically, in the absence of creating a shareholder executive subcommittee, what we have been doing is effectively all of those functions fall to the executive. So we've still had the oversight of the companies, but that's effectively being performed by the executive meeting here. What this is proposing, though, in line with good practice, is that we actually create a specific subcommittee to focus on those companies where Somerset Council either wholly owns or partially owns. And again, you can see the details set out in both the protocol, but also in the appendices. The only final thing I would flag is one of the changes that's a result of creating a shareholder executive subcommittee is the need to amend the existing property and investment subcommittee, because that's got some company related functions. And again, if you're trying to create something, you want to consolidate them into one. So again, just to flag, why is there also reference to that subcommittee? It's because there's a change needed.
Okay. Thank you very much, Scott. Anything to add? Alan or Kahindi? Not seeing anything. Any comments from members? Liz?
Just to say, Chair, that I do welcome this. I know from my conversations with Mr. Heafy, our Section 151 officer, that this is the right way for us to be working, and it may well be that Mr. Heafy may wish to come in and make that point himself, but I have been listening when he's been telling me that we should be kind of putting our house in order, and so pleased to do that.
Always listen to experts. It's good advice. Kahindi, is there anything you wanted to add?
There's nothing to add, Chair, but if there are questions, I'm happy to deal with them.
Always happy to hear that from a lawyer. And Clive?
Nothing to add, Leader. At the end of the day, this is good practice, as has been said, recommended by SIPFA and lawyers in local government, and in response to previous failures across local government. It's good practice for authorities to put this arrangement in place and separate out the running of a company, the dealings with the company on a day-to-day basis, with the management of the council's interests in a company, which are very different things. So I endorse this.
Okay, so we've got clear advice from professionals that this is the best way to go. Heather?
I was only going to say that I just think it's such a sensible idea. And I'm almost kind of surprised that we weren't doing it already in some respects, but you can't get to everything everywhere. I just think it sounds really good. And if you want a second to when it comes to it, I'm happy to. But I'm not stopping the debate at this point of this one.
No, I think it's one of those items that you think, yeah, why didn't we do this earlier? But because we didn't is the answer. And if you look across where those organisations came from in terms of their previous iterations, it's from a variety of sources, and this brings together, I think, tidily the democratic oversight of those. Any comments from any other members? Diogo?
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions to Scott. How quickly or how soon will the first kind of meeting be once and if the exec agree to this? And also, oh shoot, I saw that. What was the second question? I had another question. Oh yeah, am I assuming correctly that members of all political parties can listen into this in the same way that they can the other investment one? Okay, and my last one, which is to exec members, is considering the debate that was helpfully had in the previous report about the time in which some members have had to read and digest those scrutiny comments, just making sure from our perspective that those red changes, which were only published yesterday within 24 hours, have been given the correct consideration by exec members before they consider it.
Okay, and the answer to the third question, I hope, is a yes. All round, yeah. We have noted the red ink, which is due diligence. And Scott, the previous two questions.
And in terms of the first question, which is how soon would the first meeting be, I think we would certainly aim to try and mobilise the first meeting after the AGM, so hopefully by the end of May, early June. The second point I would flag, in addition to clearly members being able to attend the meeting, when the meeting is held in public, there may well, though, be items of business which may mean it need to move into private session. Again, members are still able to attend those as well. Just like the other executive subcommittees, how will members, but also members of the public, find out about what is this new committee going to look at? Again, all of its items of business will be published on the executive forward plan, just like the planning and transport subcommittee and just like the property and investment. So again, there will be advanced transparency in terms of the work of this committee.
I love that phrase, advanced transparency. I think we should stick that down somewhere. Superb. I'm not seeing any other members who wish to comment. I'm happy to propose this as my portfolio. Heather's already indicated that she'll second. All those in favour, please. All those against, that's clearly carried. And I believe that concludes our meeting. It says estimated finish time at 3 p.m. and it's 14:58. So please enjoy your 2 minutes of liberty. And thank you ever so much, everybody, for your attendance and consideration of the important items we've looked at today, and wish you a safe journey home. Thank you very much, everybody.